The text from my best friend Vanessa came through just as I was pulling into the parking garage for my job interview at Nexus Technologies. Your aunt is here. She's claiming to be you. I slammed on the brakes so hard my coffee splattered across the dashboard. My Aunt Patricia was at my job interview. The interview I'd spent 3 months preparing for. The one at the company recently named one of the most innovative startups of the year. My phone rang immediately. Vanessa worked reception at Nexus, which was how I'd learned about the opening for Senior Creative Director in the first place. Sarah, I'm hiding in the bathroom, she whispered urgently. Your aunt walked in 15 minutes ago, showed your driver's license, and said she was here for the 10 a.m. interview. Security checked her in as Sarah Martinez. That's impossible. I have my license right here. I pulled out my wallet and my stomach dropped. My license was gone. Patricia had been at my apartment 2 days ago, supposedly to apologize for missing my birthday. She'd spilled wine on my jacket, insisted on helping clean up, and had been near my purse. Vanessa, I'm in the parking garage. I'm coming up right now. No. Wait. Mr. Castellanos isn't here yet. He's the CEO who's doing the final interview. If you come up now, security will think you're the imposter. Your aunt has your ID. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing. Patricia had always been jealous of any success in our family that wasn't hers. When I graduated with honors, she told people I hadn't earned it. When I'd won a design award, she claimed the idea was hers. But this was a new low. What's she doing now? I asked. She's in conference room A with the hiring panel. I can see her through the glass. Sarah, she's wearing the exact same outfit you posted on Instagram yesterday. The blue blazer, the portfolio case, everything. I felt sick. I posted about my interview outfit because I was excited and nervous, wanting encouragement from friends. Patricia had liked the post, commented with heart emojis and good luck, niece. Vanessa, you have to help me. This job, it's everything. I know, but, she gasped. Oh no, Mr. Castellanos just walked in. He's early. Through the phone, I heard the distant ding of elevator doors, the sound of confident footsteps, then Vanessa's sharp intake of breath. Sarah, he's going straight to conference room A. I have to go back to my desk. Just stay put. I'll text you. The line went dead. I sat in my car, watching the minutes tick by on the dashboard clock. 10:03, 10:07, 10:11. Then my phone buzzed with rapid texts from Vanessa. OMG, he knows. Your aunt is done. Get up here now. I ran to the elevator, my portfolio clutched in my sweaty hands. As the floors counted up, 5, 6, 7, I tried to prepare myself for whatever chaos I was about to walk into. The elevator opened on the 12th floor to a scene I'll never forget. The glass-walled conference room was lit up like a stage. Inside, Patricia sat rigid in a chair, her face pale. Across from her stood a man I recognized from countless business magazines, Lorenzo Castellanos, 32 years old, self-made billionaire, tech innovator. And surrounding Patricia were 2 security guards and several members of the legal department. But it was Lorenzo's face that stopped me cold. He was staring at Patricia with an expression of such controlled fury that even through the glass I could feel its weight. Vanessa grabbed my arm. He knew immediately. The second he walked in, he took one look at her and said, "You're not Sarah Martinez." She tried to argue, and he said, "Sarah Martinez has a scar on her left hand from when she punched through a window to help me when we were teenagers. You don't have that scar." I looked down at my left hand instinctively, at the white line that ran from my knuckles to my wrist, a permanent reminder of one of the hardest nights of our lives. "He was your foster kid," Vanessa whispered. "Lorenzo?" I stared through the glass at the powerful CEO, trying to reconcile him with the scared 13-year-old I remembered. That's Enzo. 15 years ago, I'd been 18, working as a night aide at Riverside Group Home while putting myself through community college. Enzo had been placed there after his 5th failed foster home. Brilliant but guarded, angry but desperate for connection, he'd been labeled difficult by the system. I'd been the only staff member he talked to, probably because I was barely older than him and treated him like a person instead of a problem. We'd bonded over late-night talks about comic books, his coding skills, and our shared experience of growing up without real parents. The night his foster father had shown up drunk, Demanding Enzo return to access the continued foster care checks had been a nightmare. The man had broken into the group home, cornered Enzo in a library. I'd heard Enzo screaming and hadn't thought twice. I punched through the glass door when the lock jammed, grabbed a shard, and held it to the foster father's throat until police arrived. 27 stitches, permanent nerve damage in 2 fingers, and a commendation from the state. Enzo had held my bloody hand in the ambulance, promising he'd make something of himself, that my sacrifice wouldn't be wasted. I'd lost track of him when he'd aged out of the system. I'd heard rumors, full scholarship to MIT, dropping out to start a company, early investor in 3 unicorn startups. But Lorenzo Castellanos, CEO of Nexus Technologies, I'd never made the connection. He changed his last name. The conference room door flew open, and Lorenzo's voice carried across the floor. Call the police. Identity theft, fraud, and attempted corporate espionage. Patricia's shrill voice followed. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just helping my niece. She's too shy for interviews, so I... Stop. Lorenzo's voice was ice. You're on camera admitting you're not Sarah Martinez. You presented false identification. You signed legal documents under her name. That's felony identity theft. That's when he saw me. Time seemed to stop. His dark eyes, older now, harder, but still unmistakably Enzo's, locked onto mine. 1,000 emotions crossed his face in an instant: shock, recognition, something that looked like joy, then back to controlled professionalism. Sarah, he said simply. Patricia whipped around, her perfectly contoured face contorting with rage. You little bitch. This was supposed to be my chance. Do you know how hard it's been for me? You young people get all the opportunities while women my age are invisible. I deserve this. You deserve jail time, Lorenzo said coldly. He hadn't looked away from me. Security, hold her here until the police arrive. Legal team, I want charges pressed to the fullest extent. Then softer, to me, Sarah, could you come with me, please? I followed him to his office, my legs shaking. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, millions of dollars in modern art on the walls. But what caught my eye was a small framed photo on his desk. A group photo from Riverside Group Home. I was in it, 18 years old, standing next to a scrawny 13-year-old Enzo, my bandaged hand on his shoulder. You kept it, I said stupidly. It's the only photo I have from before, he said, sitting on the edge of his desk. Before everything changed. Before you change everything. Enzo. Lorenzo now. Lorenzo Castellanos. I took my mother's maiden name when I started the company. Enzo Kowalski was a foster kid with a juvie record. Lorenzo Castellanos could raise venture capital. You did it, I said, tears burning my eyes. You made something of yourself. You kept your promise. Because of you. He stood pacing to the window. Do you know what happened after that night, after you fought him off? I shook my head. The state finally terminated his parental rights. I got placed with an emergency foster family, the Castellanos. Good people. They saw my coding skills, got me into a computer program. I got into MIT, started my first company in my dorm room. He turned back to me. Every line of code I wrote, I thought about you. About how you didn't hesitate. You saw a kid in trouble and you punched through glass to save him. Anyone would have. No, he said firmly. They wouldn't have. 23 staff members had worked at Riverside while I was there. You were the only one who ever really saw me. And today, he laughed, but it was bitter. Today I get to return the favor in the most bizarre way possible. About that, I said awkwardly. I swear I had no idea you were Lorenzo Castellanos. I apply for this job on merit. I'm not trying to trade on our past. Sarah. He held up his hand. I had your portfolio for 3 months. It's brilliant, revolutionary, actually. Your approach to user experience design is exactly what Nexus needs. I was already planning to hire you before this. He gestured toward the conference room where Patricia was now being led away in handcuffs, reporters already gathering in the lobby. Vanessa was right, this was going viral. But now I have a problem, Lorenzo continued. If I hire you, people will say it's nepotism. That you got the job because of our history. My heart sank. Patricia had not only stolen my interview, she tainted any possibility of me getting this job. Unless, Lorenzo said, a smile playing at his lips, we make the history public. Control the narrative. Local woman who saved foster child's life 15 years ago reunites with him at job interview where her aunt tried to steal her identity. The media will eat it up. You want to publicize that you were in foster care? I've been thinking about it anyway. Too many kids in the system think they have no future. Maybe knowing the CEO of Nexus Technologies aged out of foster care will help some of them. He pulled out his phone. Plus, your aunt's mugshot is already trending on Twitter. #AuntFromHell is the #1 hashtag right now. I couldn't help but laugh. Then reality hit. She's still my family, my mom's sister. This is going to destroy family dinners. The family that tries to steal your identity and sabotage your career? Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. That family? He had a point. Can I see it? I asked. The mugshot? He showed me his phone. Patricia looked haggard, her carefully applied makeup smeared, her stolen blue blazer. My blazer that she must have ordered online, wrinkled. The comments were brutal but not undeserved. So Lorenzo said, setting down his phone. Sarah Martinez. Want to be my senior creative director? Final interview question. How would you redesign our user interface to increase accessibility for neurodivergent users? For the next hour, we talked design. Not as the traumatized foster kid and the group home aide who'd saved him, but as two professionals passionate about technology and innovation. I showed him my portfolio, my vision for inclusive design, my revolutionary approach to user experience. You're hired, he said when I finished. Pending background check, which I assume won't involve any identity theft charges. Just the one aunt with charges, I said dryly. As I signed my employment contract, my real contract with my real name, Lorenzo's assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Castellanos? The police want to know if Ms. Martinez wants to add any charges regarding the stolen identification. I thought about Patricia sitting in a cell, her Botox and fillers doing nothing to hide her ugly character. Identity theft and fraud are enough. But I want a restraining order. She comes near me or my job again, she goes back to jail. Done. That evening, the story hit every major news outlet. CEO recognizes childhood hero during identity theft interview scam. The photo they used was perfect, security footage of Lorenzo pointing at Patricia while she held my stolen ID, with me visible through the glass, holding my portfolio, the real Sarah Martinez watching my aunt destroy her own life. My phone rang nonstop. Reporters, family members, friends who recognized me in the viral video. My mother called, mortified and apologetic. Patricia called me from jail, she said weakly. She wants bail money. Don't you dare, I said. I won't. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I knew she was jealous of you, but this. She tried to steal my future, Mom, because she couldn't stand that I might succeed. The trial was swift. Patricia pled guilty to identity theft and fraud, receiving 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. The judge also ordered her to pay restitution and undergo mental health counseling. Her mugshot became a meme when you try to steal your niece's job, but the CEO remembers when she saved his life. My first day at Nexus, Lorenzo called an all-hands meeting. 15 years ago, he began, a teenage girl punched through a glass door to save me from an abusive situation. She nearly lost the use of her hand protecting a foster kid everyone else had written off. That woman is our new senior creative director, Sarah Martinez. She's here not because of that history, but because she's brilliant. Her aunt tried to steal her identity to take this job, not knowing our connection. But I would have hired the real Sarah Martinez regardless. Her portfolio speaks for itself. The applause was thunderous. Later, in my new office, with a view almost as good as Lorenzo's, Vanessa brought me a coffee in a frame for my desk. What's this? I asked. Check Twitter, she said, grinning. I opened the app to find a photo Lorenzo had posted. Him and me in my new office, my scare hand visible as I held my Nexus ID badge. The caption. 15 years ago, at Sarah Martinez Design saved my life. Today, she's saving our user experience. Also, her aunt is in jail for trying to steal her identity. Karma works in mysterious ways. Hashtag second chances, hashtag foster kids succeed, hashtag aunt from hell. It had 2.3 million likes. Patricia wrote me from prison 6 months later, a rambling letter about how I'd ruined her life, how unfair it was that I had opportunities she never did. I threw it in the trash, unopened after the first paragraph. Some people never learn that jealousy and entitlement are poison. They only destroy the person carrying them. Meanwhile, I revolutionized Nexus's design philosophy, leading to a 40% increase in user engagement. Lorenzo and I became not just colleagues but true friends, bonding over late-night product launches and our shared understanding that your past doesn't determine your future, your choices do. And somewhere in all of that, the girl who punched through glass to save a scared kid became the woman whose designs would impact millions of users worldwide. All because my aunt tried to steal my identity and failed to realize that some things, like scars, history, and the recognition of someone whose life you saved, can't be faked. The universe, it turns out, has a sense of humor about justice, and sometimes the best revenge against someone who tries to steal your identity is simply being yourself, scars and all.
I stared at my reflection in the polished silver serving spoon, watching my face distort like a funhouse mirror, while my sister Paige's words hung in the air. "Oh, please, what would you know about sacrifice? You've never even had kids." "My name is Harmony, and I've spent the last 6 months eating ramen noodles so my niece can go to college. Not that anyone at this table knows that." "Pass the potatoes," I mumbled, trying to deflect the conversation. But Paige wasn't done. "I mean, really, when was the last time you even dated someone?" She adjusted her designer watch, a gift from her second husband, Dwayne. "You're pushing 40, sis. Tick-tock." Around the massive dining table, forks clinked against plates, as our family pretended not to notice the usual dynamic unfolding. My mother Lena dabbed her mouth with a cloth napkin, while my father Henry suddenly found his green beans fascinating. "I'm actually quite happy with my life," I said quietly, though the words felt hollow even to me. "The non-profit work is rewarding." Paige rolled her eyes. "Right. Saving the world one do-gooder project at a time. Meanwhile, some of us are building real careers and families." She gestured around her newly renovated dining room, all chrome and marble. "Speaking of which, did you see Oakley's new playroom?" On cue, her 7-year-old son burst into the room wielding an iPad Pro. "Mummy, can I show Aunt Harmony my new gaming setup?" "Of course, sweetie," Paige cooed, then stage whispered to me. "It's the latest model. Dwayne spoils him, but he deserves it. He's reading at a 5th grade level already." I nodded, thinking about the electricity bill I'd just gotten for my studio apartment, the one I couldn't pay because I'd transferred every spare penny to Emma's tuition account. Emma, Paige's eldest, caught my eye from across the table. At 18, she looked so much like her mother, but there was a gentleness in her features that Paige had lost somewhere between her first divorce and her second marriage. "Aunt Harmony helped me with my English paper last week," Emma offered. "She's really good at editing." "That's nice, honey," Paige dismissed, "but you should really be focusing on practical skills, like business or law, something that actually pays." My mother finally spoke up. "Paige has a point, dear. We worry about you, all alone in that tiny apartment. Teaching underprivileged kids to read is noble, but it doesn't buy a house," I finished for her. "I know. Or attract a husband," Paige added with a smirk. "I mean, what kind of man wants a woman who can barely support herself?" I gripped my fork tighter, thinking about the second job I'd picked up tutoring after hours, about the spreadsheet on my laptop tracking every penny I'd managed to scrape together for Emma's education, about the letter from Harvard sitting in my email inbox, waiting to be printed and signed. "I managed just fine," I said. "Really?" Paige leaned forward. "Because I drove past your building last week. That neighborhood isn't exactly screaming, successful adult. More like, gave up on life." Emma's face flushed red. She knew what I'd given up, what I was still giving up. "Paige," our father warned half-heartedly. "That's enough." "What? I'm concerned about my baby sister? She's not getting any younger, and let's be honest, she's never been exactly maternal material. Remember when she killed that houseplant I gave her?" "It was a plastic plant," I muttered. "And you knew that when you gave it to me." The table erupted in laughter, except for Emma, who stared at her plate. I could see her hands shaking slightly. "Don't be so sensitive," Paige chided. "We're just trying to help. Right, Mum?" "We just want you to be happy, dear," my mother sighed. "Like your sister." I looked around at my sister's perfect house, with its perfect furniture and perfectly miserable secrets, at my parents who never saw past the surface, at Emma, who deserved so much better than all of this. "I am happy," I said. And for the first time that evening, I meant it, because I knew something they didn't. In 6 months, Emma would be walking through Harvard Yard, her head held high, while Paige's carefully constructed world of appearances crumbled around her designer shoes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't saying anything at all. "More wine," Paige offered, already filling my glass without waiting for an answer. "You look like you need it. Must be stressful, living paycheck to paycheck." I smiled and raised the glass. "To family," I said. Emma caught my eye again and gave me the tiniest nod. Soon, I thought, soon they'd all know what real sacrifice looked like. But for now, I just took another bite of overcooked pot roast and let them think they knew me. Let them think they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. 6 months earlier, I was grading papers at my tiny kitchen table when my phone buzzed. Emma's text was simple. "Can I come over, please?" 20 minutes later, she sat across from me, clutching a stack of papers. Her eyes were red, and her hands trembled as she spread the documents across my scratched IKEA table. "I got in," she whispered. "Not just to one, to all of them." Her fingers traced over the letterheads. Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Brown. "Emma? That's incredible." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Mum won't help me," she said, her voice cracking. I told her about the acceptances, and she laughed. My heart sank. "What exactly did she say?" "She said I deliberately betrayed her by applying to schools she didn't approve of, that I knew she wanted me to go to state school, where her friends' kids go, where she could show me off at local alumni events." Emma's shoulders shook. "She said if I wanted to ruin my life with liberal arts dreams, I could pay for it myself." I stood up and put the kettle on, a habit I'd picked up from my mother, ironically, making tea for difficult conversations. "Did you show these to your dad?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Emma's father had disappeared years ago, leaving nothing but a trail of unpaid child support. Mum said she won't even let him co-sign loans if he offers. Not that he would. Emma pulled out another paper, a financial aid letter. "I got some scholarships, but there's still a huge gap. Like, huge. I set 2 mugs of chamomile tea on the table and studied the numbers. My stomach clenched. The remaining cost per semester was more than I made in 3 months. "What about Dwayne?" I suggested. "He seems to throw money around pretty freely." Emma's laugh was bitter. "Mum said, and I quote, 'Dwayne's money is for Oakley's future. You had your chance to be reasonable.'" I watched my niece, this brilliant, determined young woman, crumple in on herself, and something inside me hardened into resolve. "Let me think about this," I said carefully. "There might be a way." Emma looked up sharply. "Aunt Harmony, no. I know you don't have money. Mum makes sure everyone knows that." I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking app. "I have some savings, and my credit is good. I could—" "Stop." Emma stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "I won't let you destroy yourself for me. I've seen your apartment. I know you're already struggling." Sit down." I waited until she did. "Do you know why I work at the nonprofit?" She shook her head. "Because every day I get to help people who society has written off, people who just need one person to believe in them." I reached across the table and grabbed her hand. "You're not a lost cause, Emma. You're an investment." "Mum says—" "Your mother," I interrupted, "is afraid of anything she can't control, including you becoming more successful than she is." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "I can't pay you back. Not for years." "I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to succeed. To prove her wrong." I started typing numbers into a spreadsheet. "But you have to promise me something." "Anything. Don't tell her. Don't tell anyone. Let her think you figured it out on your own." I looked up from the screen. "Can you do that?" Emma nodded slowly. "But why? Why help me in secret?" I thought about all the family dinners, all the snide comments, all the times Paige had made sure I knew I was less than her. Because sometimes the best revenge is letting people believe they've won, right until the moment they realize they've lost everything. 3 months later, I handed Emma an envelope containing the first semester's tuition payment. We stood in my apartment, surrounded by the moving boxes she'd secretly packed while Paige was at yoga. "I don't deserve this," she whispered, holding the envelope like it might disappear. "You deserve everything," I corrected her, "and more. How did you even get this much money?" I thought about my sold car, my emptied retirement account, the 3 extra tutoring clients I'd taken on. "Don't worry about that. Just promise me you'll work hard." Emma hugged me fiercely. "I will. I'll make you proud. You already have." I pulled back and wiped her tears. "Now go. Your mother thinks you're at the library." As Emma left, I sat down at my kitchen table and looked at my new budget. Ramen noodles, generic everything. No heat except when absolutely necessary. It would be a hard few years. But watching my sister's carefully constructed facade crack when she realized her daughter had outsmarted her, that would be priceless. I picked up my phone and typed out a message to my friend Evan at work. "It's done. First payment sent." His reply came quickly. "You're either crazy or brilliant. Maybe both." I smiled and wrote back, "Maybe, but crazy gets things done." "You look terrible," Evan said, dropping a coffee on my desk. "When's the last time you slept?" I glanced at the clock. 7:30 a.m. I'd been at the office since 5 catching up on grant proposals before my first tutoring session at 4 p.m. "Sleep is for people who don't have tuition payments due," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee. "Speaking of which..." Evan pulled up a chair and lowered his voice. "Did you see Paige's latest Facebook post?" I shook my head. I'd muted my sister months ago, right after Emma left for college. He pulled out his phone and showed me. Paige, beaming in front of a sold sign, caption reading, "Just closed on our vacation home. So blessed to provide amazing opportunities for our little Prince Oakley, while to blessed, while successful mom, while living my best life." Guess who she tagged in the comments? Evan scrolled down. "So sad some people will never know the joy of providing for their children." "Right, sis?" My stomach churned. She's trying to get a reaction. "She's trying to hurt you," Evan corrected. "And meanwhile, you're working yourself to death to put her daughter through Harvard." I opened my spreadsheet, the one tracking every payment, every extra job, every penny scraped together. 3 more semesters, I can do this. "Harmony," Evan's voice was serious, "you're not eating. Your clothes are hanging off you, and yesterday I saw you calculating if you could sell your blood plasma." "It's good money," I defended weakly. "This is insane." He gestured at my desk, covered in tutoring schedules and consulting contracts. "Let me help. Let us help." "Us?" "The office. We care about you. We see what you're doing, what you're sacrificing." I shook my head firmly. "No, this stays private." "Why? Because your sister's spreading rumours about how you're lazy and irresponsible with money? Because your parents believe her?" My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Saw Paige's new house. Maybe if you'd made better choices?" I turned the phone face down. "Emma's doing amazing. She made Dean's List her first semester. And you're killing yourself to keep her there." Evan leaned forward and pointed at my spreadsheet. "I saw the total, Harmony. $120,000. That's not noble anymore. That's martyrdom." "What would you have me do? Let Emma give up her dreams because her mother is a narcissist?" "No." He stood up. "I'd have you let people who care about you help carry the load." "I can't." "You can't what? Accept help? Like you're teaching Emma to do?" He walked to the door, then turned back. "You know this is a war, right? You're just dropping bombs no one's seen yet." After he left, I opened Emma's latest email. She'd attached photos of her dorm room, her new friends, her first A+ paper. She looked happy, free. My phone buzzed again. Another family group text. This time from Paige. "Having a small dinner party next week. Only successful people invited, so don't worry about it, sis." I started to type a response, then deleted it. Let her have her parties. Let her post her photos. Let her think she'd won. My office door opened again. This time it was Maria from accounting. "Hey," she said softly. "We're taking up a collection. For that after-school program you're always talking about. I knew there was no after-school program. I knew Evan had told them, but I also knew they were offering help in the only way I might accept it. "That's really kind," I managed. "We all believe in education here," she said meaningfully, "in helping young people reach their potential, no matter what it takes." That night, I sat in my cold apartment. Heat was a luxury I couldn't afford, and updated my spreadsheet. A new column caught my eye. Office collection, $6,000. Tears blurred my vision as I read Evan's note at the bottom. "We're not doing this out of pity. We're doing it because you taught us what integrity looks like." My phone buzzed one more time. Emma. "Mum's bragging about her new house. Says I could have had a room there if I'd chosen family over rebellion." I replied, "How's that paper on Shakespeare coming?" "Got an A. Professor says I should consider graduate school." "You should. But the money, let me worry about that." I could almost hear her protest through the phone. "Aunt Harmony." "Trust me," I typed. "Some things are worth every sacrifice." I looked at my bare apartment, my empty fridge, my stack of tutoring materials, then at the photo of Emma on my desk, smiling in front of Harvard Yard. Evan was right. This was a war. But wars aren't always won with dramatic battles. Sometimes they're won with quiet persistence, with hidden strength, with letting your enemy think they're invincible right up until the moment they fall. And Paige? She had no idea she was already falling. The Instagram notification made my phone buzz during my lunch break. Paige posted, "Living my best life in Barcelona. Try blessed try luxury travel." The photo showed my sister lounging by an infinity pool, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, champagne flute in hand. The caption continued, "Some people save for retirement. I save for memories." "She's really something," Evan said, peering over my shoulder at the break room table. "Didn't she just buy that vacation house?" "Dwayne's money," I muttered, scrolling through the comments. "Mum, so proud of my successful girl, living the dream." "Dad, that's my princess." Paige's reply, "Thanks, Mum and Dad. Some of us know how to make you proud." I set the phone down and unwrapped my peanut butter sandwich, the same lunch I'd eaten for months now. The memory of my own parents' rejection surfaced unbidden. "We can't help with grad school," Mum had said 5 years ago. "Paige needs our support more. She has children to think about." My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Emma. "Did you see Mum's posts?" "Hard to miss," I replied. "She's spending my college fund on that trip, the one she saved for me all these years. Just found the empty account statements in her office." My hands shook as I typed, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I want to tell everyone at Thanksgiving. About you, about everything." "Emma, no. I have proof. I've kept a journal, every nasty comment, every manipulation, and I have the bank statements showing how she drained my account." Before I could respond, another message popped up. "I also have something else to tell you. I got into a summer program at Harvard, full scholarship this time. I did it on my own." Pride and relief flooded through me. "That's amazing." "There's more," she typed. "I met someone. His name is Ezra. He's in my literature class. He knows everything about Mom, about you. He says I need to stop protecting her." Evan sat down across from me. "Everything okay? You look pale." I showed him the messages. "Smart girl," he said. The truth was going to come out eventually. "But Thanksgiving? The whole family will be there." "Exactly." He smiled grimly. "Maximum impact. Your sister's been building her house of cards for years. Maybe it's time for a strong wind." My phone chimed with an email notification. From Harvard. "Congratulations on your outstanding academic performance." I read aloud, hands trembling. "Emma made Dean's List. Again. While her mother drinks champagne in Barcelona," Evan noted. "Paid for with her college fund." I opened Instagram again. Paige had posted another photo, this time of her new kitchen remodel. "Because every queen needs her castle. Sorry not sorry for living my best life while others waste their money on noble causes." The comments poured in. "You deserve it all, queen." Such an inspiration. Foul boss mom. "Some people just don't understand success." Emma texted again. "I'm bringing Ezra to Thanksgiving, and my journal, and the acceptance letter, and every bank statement. I'm done pretending." I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Are you sure?" "More sure than I've ever been. Mum needs to know that money isn't everything, that what you did, what you sacrificed, that's real success." Evan read over my shoulder. "She's right, you know." "It'll destroy Paige." "No," he corrected. "It'll expose Paige. There's a difference." I thought about my sister's carefully curated life, built on appearances and other people's money, about my parents' blind devotion to her facade, about Emma, watching it all, taking notes, waiting. My phone buzzed one final time. Emma had sent a photo, her and a kind-faced young man, both smiling in front of a library. "This is Ezra. He says hi, and he says to tell you that sometimes the quiet ones win in the end." I saved the photo, then turned back to my sandwich. In 2 weeks, we'd all sit down for Thanksgiving dinner at Paige's showcase home. She'd brag about Barcelona, about Oakley's achievements, about her perfect life, and then her carefully constructed world would crumble, not with a bang, but with the quiet turning of journal pages, with bank statements and truth and a daughter's clear voice saying, "Enough." I texted Emma back, "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you." Her response was immediate. "I know, you always have been. That's why I'm doing this, because someone needs to show them what real love looks like." I closed my eyes and saw it all. The coming storm, the shocked faces, the unravelling of years of lies. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid, because Emma was right. Sometimes love doesn't look like infinity pools and designer sunglasses. Sometimes it looks like peanut butter sandwiches and empty bank accounts and a quiet aunt who gave up everything for someone else's dreams. And sometimes Karma arrives wearing a Harvard sweatshirt, carrying a well-worn journal full of truth. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a thin layer of frost on my windshield and knots in my stomach. I'd chosen my plainest sweater and most sensible shoes. No point giving Paige extra ammunition today. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. My phone kept buzzing with family messages. Mum, "Don't forget Paige is gluten-free now." Paige, "Starting dinner at 4 sharp. Try to be on time for once." Dad, "Excited to see everyone." I pulled into the circular driveway behind a sleek black Tesla. Must be Ezra's car. Emma had mentioned his family had money, but unlike Paige, he never flaunted it. Before I could ring the doorbell, Emma threw the door open and pulled me into a fierce hug. "You look tired," she whispered. "Are you eating enough?" "Says the college student living on ramen," I deflected. A tall young man appeared behind her, dressed in a simple button-down shirt and khakis. "You must be Aunt Harmony," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Ezra. Emma's told me everything about you." "Not everything," Emma corrected, patting her bag meaningfully. I caught a glimpse of a worn leather journal inside. "Emma!" Paige's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Is that your aunt? Remind her to wipe her feet. We just had the floors redone." Emma rolled her eyes and led us inside. The house smelled of turkey and tension. My mother was arranging flowers in the dining room. "Oh, Harmony dear, that's an interesting sweater choice." "Thanks, Mum." "Emma darling." Paige emerged from the kitchen, wearing a designer apron that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Aren't you going to introduce us to your friend?" "Boyfriend," Emma corrected firmly. "This is Ezra. He's pre-law at Harvard." Paige's smile tightened. "How nice, though I always pictured you with someone more." She glanced at Ezra's simple clothes. He's fashion-forward. "Not everyone measures worth by designer labels, Mum." My phone buzzed. "Evan, backup support standing by. Let me know if you need anything." Before I could reply, my father walked in with Oakley, both carrying iPads. "Look what Grandpa got me," Oakley announced. "It's the newest one." "Another one?" Emma muttered under her breath. "Well, some children deserve rewards," Paige said pointedly, "when they follow family expectations." I watched Emma's hand tighten around her bag. Ezra placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. The doorbell rang again. Dwayne, returning from his golf game. He barely acknowledged anyone before heading upstairs to change. "Dinner in 20, Paige called out. "Emma, help me in the kitchen. Harmony, just try not to touch anything expensive." As soon as Paige and Emma disappeared into the kitchen, my phone rang. It was Evan. "Hey." I stepped onto the back patio to take the call. "Everything okay?" "Just checking in. Also, remember that collection we took up? It's grown. We're up to $6,000 now." Tears pricked my eyes. "Evan, the whole office believes in what you're doing, in who you are." His voice softened. "Don't let them make you feel small today." Back inside, everyone was gathering around the dining table. Emma caught my eye as I sat down, then leaned close to whisper. "I brought the acceptance letter and the journal." My heart raced. "Are you sure about this?" She squeezed my hand under the table. More sure than I've ever been. Paige swept in with the turkey, beaming at her perfect table setting. "Before we begin, I'd just like to say how blessed I am to have such a successful life. My beautiful home, my perfect Oakley, my supportive husband." "Your Barcelona trip?" Emma added innocently. "Yes. Speaking of which, who wants to see pictures?" As Paige pulled out her phone to show off her luxury vacation, I watched Emma exchange a look with Ezra. He nodded slightly. "Mom?" Emma said clearly. "Before we start, I have something to share with everyone." Paige waved her hand dismissively. "After dinner, honey. Now, look at this infinity pool." "No." Emma's voice was stronger now. "I think everyone needs to hear this now." The room grew quiet. My mother set down her wine glass. My father stopped scrolling on his iPad. "Emma!" Paige's voice held a warning. "This is not the time." "Actually," Emma reached into her bag. "This is exactly the time." I watched my niece pull out her journal, her hands steady, her eyes clear. Beside her, Ezra sat up straighter, ready to support her. Across the table, Paige's perfect smile began to crack, and I realized this wasn't just Emma's moment of truth. This was karma, served on a Thanksgiving platter with a side of long-overdue justice. The journal opened with a soft crack of leather, and the real feast was about to begin. "So," Paige's voice dripped with false sweetness, "how's that state college treating you, Emma? Making lots of friends at the local campus?" Emma placed her Harvard acceptance letter on the table. "Actually, I've been at Harvard. Dean's List both semesters." The silence was deafening. Paige's fork clattered against her plate. That's impossible," she sputtered. "We discussed this. You couldn't afford—" "I couldn't," Emma agreed, "but someone else could." She opened her journal. "Someone who actually cares about my future." My mother's hand flew to her throat. "Emma, dear, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that while Mom was posting about her Barcelona trip, paid for with my college fund, by the way." Emma's voice was steady. "Aunt Harmony was working 3 jobs to put me through Harvard." Paige's face went white. "That's ridiculous. She can barely afford her rent." "Exactly." Emma turned a page in her journal. "Should I read what you said about that, Mum?" "Let's see. September 15th. Mum says Harmony is an embarrassment to the family. Living in that cheap apartment, driving that old car." She looked up. "The car she sold to pay for my textbooks." "Emma," my father warned. "That's enough." "No, it's not." She continued reading. October 3rd. Mum told everyone at her dinner party that Aunt Harmony was probably going to end up homeless. They all laughed. Emma's voice cracked, while Aunt Harmony was skipping meals to save money for my tuition. Dwayne shifted uncomfortably. "Paige, did you really spend Emma's college fund on that trip?" "Of course not." Paige reached for her wine glass. "Emma's being dramatic. She's always been—" "I have the bank statements," Emma cut in, pulling out more papers. "You transferred everything to your personal account the day after I told you about Harvard?" My mother gasped. "Paige, tell me you didn't—" "Oh, like you're any better?" Emma flipped to another page. November 20th. Grandma says Aunt Harmony is just jealous of Mum's success, that she should have tried harder in life. She turned to our mother. "Do you know what trying harder looks like? It looks like walking 5 miles to work because you can't afford gas. It looks like living without heat in winter." Oakley looked up from his iPad, confused. "Mum, why are you crying?" "Because your sister is being very cruel," Paige said, her voice shaking. "Making up stories." "They're not stories." Emma pulled out her phone. "I have pictures of Aunt Harmony's empty fridge, of the pawn shop receipt when she sold her boyfriend's guitar, the only thing she had left of him, to pay for my midterms. The room spun as everyone turned to stare at me. I hadn't known Emma had documented so much. You... Paige pointed a trembling finger at me. You did this on purpose. Turn my daughter against me. No, Ezra spoke up for the first time. Your daughter just finally saw the truth. We all did. And who are you to judge my family? Paige snapped. I'm someone who knows what real love looks like, he replied calmly. It looks like sacrifice, like putting someone else's dreams before your own comfort. Emma wasn't done. She pulled out one final paper, a text message screenshot. Here's what finally made me decide to speak up. Mum's text from last week. Emma deserves to struggle like the rest of us. It builds character. Paige's wineglass slipped from her hand, spreading red across the white tablecloth like blood. While you were building character in Barcelona, Emma's voice was ice. Aunt Harmony's co-workers took up a collection to help with my tuition. People who barely know me showed more love than my own mother. Traitor, Paige whispered, her mascara running. You stole her from me. I finally found my voice. No, Paige, you pushed her away, all by yourself. I gave her everything. You gave her things, I corrected. Designer clothes, expensive toys. But when she needed support, real support, you chose spite. My father stood up, his face red. Now, see here. No, Dad. Emma closed her journal. For once, you're going to listen to every cruel word, every manipulation, every lie. Because that's what family dinner is for, right? Telling the truth? Paige pushed back from the table, chairs scraping against hardwood. I won't sit here and be attacked in my own home. Then leave, Emma said simply. Run away, like you always do when the truth gets too loud. The silence that followed was broken only by Oakley's quiet sniffles and the steady drip of wine from the tablecloth to the floor. My mother reached for Paige's hand. Darling, surely there's been some mistake. The only mistake, Emma stood up, gathering her evidence, was thinking money could cover up who you really are, Mom. But don't worry, I learned something valuable from all this. She smiled sadly. I learned that sometimes the richest people are the ones who give away everything they have. Paige's face contorted. You'll regret this, she hissed, grabbing Oakley's arm. All of you will regret this. As she stormed out, dragging her crying son behind her, Emma turned to me and whispered, I brought the acceptance letter. And the journal. I couldn't help but smile through my tears. I know, sweetie, I know. The sound of Paige's heels clicking on hardwood echoed through the house as she stormed back in, Oakley still sniffling behind her. No, she seethed. You don't get to sit there looking righteous. Not in my house. Paige, Dwayne started. Maybe we should... Shut up, she whirled on him. This is between me and my manipulative sister who turned my daughter against me. I stood up slowly. Is that what you think happened? I know exactly what happened, Paige spat. You were jealous, always have been, of my success, my family, my life, so you poisoned Emma's mind with your poverty porn story. Emma slammed her journal down. Want to hear more stories, Mum? How about March 12th? Mum told Aunt Harmony she should be sterilised since she'd make a terrible mother anyway. I was joking, Paige protested. April 23rd, Emma continued. Mum bought another designer bag while telling everyone Aunt Harmony probably sells drugs to afford food. That's enough, my father interrupted. No, I said quietly. Let's tell the whole truth. You want to know how I afforded Emma's tuition, Paige. I sold everything I owned. I worked 90-hour weeks. I lived on ramen and dollar store coffee. Nobody asked you to. I pawned Mum's wedding ring, I cut in. The one she gave me when I turned 30, said it would help me find a husband someday. I turned to our mother. It paid for Emma's chemistry textbooks. Mum's face crumpled. Harmony, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You were too busy celebrating Paige's new kitchen remodel. You had no right, Paige screamed. She's my daughter. Then act like it, I shouted back, surprising everyone, including myself. While you were in Barcelona, I was helping her apply for scholarships. While you were buying Oakley his third iPad, I was skipping meals to afford her dorm deposit. Dwayne stood up. Paige, Did you really spend Emma's college fund? Stay out of this. No, he said firmly. I want to know, because I've been writing checks for Oakley's future, thinking Emma was taken care of. Emma pulled out the bank statements. Want to see where it went, Dwayne? Designer clothes, spa weekends, first-class tickets to Europe. Paige lunged for the papers, but Ezra smoothly moved them out of reach. You ungrateful little... Paige started. Grateful? I stepped between them. She worked 2 campus jobs while maintaining Dean's List. She earned a summer research position. She did everything right, Paige. Everything you should have been proud of. I would have been proud if she'd followed my plans. Your plans? Emma laughed bitterly. You mean like State University, where you could show me off at alumni events? Where I could join your sorority and marry someone you approved of? I wanted what was best for you. No, I said softly. You wanted what was best for your image. The room fell silent except for the sound of Paige's ragged breathing. You know what the worst part is? Emma's voice broke. I kept thinking you'd change. Every time Aunt Harmony helped me, I thought, Mum will come around. She'll see I'm doing well and be proud. Paige's mascara-stained face twisted. Proud? Of what? Of betraying your family? Family? I laughed. You want to talk about family? Let me tell you about family, Paige. Family is Emma calling me crying because you laughed at her Harvard acceptance letter. Family is me selling my car and walking 5 miles to work in the rain. Family is my co-workers, people who barely know Emma, pooling their money to help her succeed. I gave her everything. You gave her things, Emma corrected. Aunt Harmony gave me a future. My mother finally spoke up, her voice small. Why didn't you tell us you needed help, Harmony? Would you have believed me? Over your perfect daughter? Dad shifted uncomfortably. We could have what? I turned to him. Could have helped like you did when I wanted to go to grad school. Oh wait, you gave that money to Paige for her first wedding instead. Paige's face went from rage to something else. Fear. Because for the first time, everyone was seeing the truth. The carefully constructed image was cracking, and behind it was nothing but spite and selfishness. Get out, she whispered. All of you, get out of my house. Gladly, Emma stood, gathering her papers. But first, let me read one last entry, the one that started it all. She opened the journal one final time. Mum says Emma deserves to struggle like the rest of us. She'll regret choosing her own path. Emma closed the journal and looked directly at Paige. You're right, Mum. I did choose my path. I chose truth over appearances, love over money, and Aunt Harmony over you. As we walked out, leaving Paige standing in her perfect house with her perfect lies crumbling around her, I heard Dwayne ask quietly, What else have you been lying about? The last thing I saw was Oakley tugging on his mother's designer dress, asking, Mum, why does everyone look so sad? But Paige had no answer. For once in her life, she had nothing left to say. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke to sunlight streaming through my apartment windows, and a note slipped under my door. Emma's handwriting. Stayed at Ezra's last night. Couldn't face Mum. But I needed to tell you something. Thank you for saving my life. Love, Emma. My phone buzzed. Evan calling. Hey, I answered, voice still rough with sleep. Happy day after Thanksgiving. How are you holding up? Before I could answer, another call beeped through. My mother. I should take this, I told Evan. Want me to come over later? Maybe. Let me see how this goes. I switched calls. Hi, Mum. Harmony. Her voice was different, smaller somehow. I've been up all night thinking about everything. About you, about Emma, about... She took a shaky breath. About how wrong we were. I sat down on my worn couch saying nothing. Your father and I, we enabled Paige, believed her lies because they were prettier than the truth. She paused. Dwayne left last night, took Oakley to his mother's, said he needed time to think about who he really married. Mum, no, let me finish. I found your old grad school application, the one you wanted us to help with. I wrote a check this morning. I know you don't need it anymore, but I need to do it, to start making things right. My phone buzzed with a text. Emma, Ezra's parents want to meet you. They say anyone who sacrifices everything for education deserves to be celebrated. Mum, I said gently, it was never about the money. I know that now. She was crying. It was about love, real love, the kind Paige never understood. Another text came through from my father. I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing you. Then another from Evan. Office wants to throw Emma a celebration party. They say their investment in her future needs proper recognition. Harmony? Mum's voice pulled me back. Can we start over? Try to be the parents you deserved? Before I could answer, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw Emma and Ezra, holding coffee and breakfast bags. Mum, I need to go, but yes, we can try. I opened the door to Emma's smile, so much brighter now, so much freer. We brought real food, she announced, holding up the bags. No more ramen for you. Your mum just called me, I said. I know, she called me too. Emma set the food down. She told me about Dwayne leaving, about how everything's falling apart for Paige. And how do you feel about that? Emma exchanged a look with Ezra. Honestly, relieved. Like maybe now she'll have to face who she really is. My phone kept buzzing with messages, from co-workers, from family members, from people who had witnessed Paige's cruelty over the years, and finally felt free to speak up. You know what's funny? Emma said, unpacking breakfast sandwiches. Mum always said success was about appearances, about having the biggest house, the most expensive things. She smiled. But real success is sitting in a tiny apartment with the people who truly love you, eating breakfast sandwiches and knowing you did the right thing. Ezra raised his coffee cup. To doing the right thing. To truth, Emma added. To family, I finished. The real kind. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Paige. You'll regret this. All of it. I showed it to Emma, who took my phone and typed back. No, Mum? The only regret here is yours, for choosing pride over love, for missing out on knowing what real family looks like. She handed my phone back just as another knock came at the door. This time it was Evan, carrying more food and wearing a huge grin. The office wouldn't let me come empty-handed, he explained. They say proper revenge should be celebrated with proper breakfast. It wasn't revenge, I said softly. It was justice. Emma hugged me suddenly, fiercely. It was love, she whispered. The kind that changes lives. We all squeezed around my small table, Emma, Ezra, Evan, and me. The morning sun caught the Harvard pin on Emma's jacket, making it shine. Outside, the world was moving on. Paige was facing the consequences of her choices. My parents were beginning their long journey toward redemption. But here, in this moment, something else was happening. Something beautiful and true and right. Next semester's tuition is covered, Emma announced. I got a full scholarship. They said my essay about you convinced them. What did you write? Evan asked. Emma smiled, tears in her eyes. The truth, about how sometimes the strongest people are the quietest. How real love doesn't need designer labels. How one person's sacrifice can change everything. She reached for my hand across the table. How my aunt taught me that revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It's about building your own, brick by brick, truth by truth, love by love. And sitting there, surrounded by the family we chose, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well, loving deeply and letting the truth speak for itself.
The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m., just like Juliana promised. I should have known something was wrong when my sister suggested a family chat on a Tuesday afternoon. My name is Natalie, and I'm about to tell you how my own family tried to destroy me and how I made them pay for it. Leo, honey, can you play in your room for a bit? I called to my 8-year-old son, who was building a Lego castle on the living room floor. Mommy has some visitors. But I'm not done with the tower. Please, sweetheart. Just for a little while. Leo sighed dramatically but gathered his blocks. As he trudged down the hallway, I opened the front door to find Juliana standing there with her husband Kai and our mothers Jacqueline. All three wore the same grim expression, like they were attending a funeral. Hi, I said, stepping aside. Come in, I guess. They filed past me without the usual hugs or small talk. Juliana's designer purse caught on my coat rack, the same rack she'd called cluttered last Christmas. Kai straightened his tie and surveyed my living room like he was appraising real estate. Mom just shook her head at the toys scattered across the coffee table. Should I make coffee? I asked. This won't take long, Juliana said, settling onto my couch with perfect posture. She looked like she stepped out of a magazine, blonde hair in a sleek bob, cream-colored blazer, not a wrinkle in sight. We need to talk about what happened at Sarah's birthday party. My stomach dropped. What about it? Leo's behavior was completely unacceptable, Mom said, claiming the armchair like a throne. The screaming, the throwing himself on the ground when you said no to more cake. He's 8 years old, I interrupted. Kids have meltdowns. Not like that, Kai said. His voice was cold, clinical. Sarah and her friends were terrified. Other parents were staring. I handled it. I took him outside to calm down. You enabled it, Juliana said. You gave him the cake anyway after he threw his tantrum. Do you know how that looked? Heat crept up my neck. I gave him a small piece after he apologized and used his words. That's called positive reinforcement. That's called rewarding bad behavior, Mom snapped. Honestly, Natalie, I don't know where you learned to parent, but it wasn't from me. The three of them sat there like a tribunal, waiting for me to defend myself. I could hear Leo's muffled voice from his room, probably talking to his stuffed animals. At least someone in this house felt safe. What exactly are you asking me to do? I said. Juliana and Mom exchanged a look. Kai pulled out his phone and started typing, like this conversation was beneath him. We think you need professional help, Juliana said carefully. Parenting classes, maybe therapy. Leo needs structure, boundaries. I provide structure and boundaries. Your house is chaos, Mom said, gesturing at the lived-in mess around us. Toys everywhere, dishes in the sink, laundry on the chairs. How is a child supposed to thrive in this environment? He's thriving just fine, thank you. Is he? Juliana leaned forward. Because Sarah told me Leo said some concerning things at school. About feeling sad, about wishing he had a dad. Don't you dare, I said, my voice shaking. Don't you dare use my son's private feelings against me. We're trying to help, Kai said without looking up from his phone. But you have to be willing to accept that help. Help? I laughed, but it came out bitter. This feels more like an ambush. It's an intervention, Mom said, and frankly, it's overdue. If you don't get professional help, we can't continue enabling this situation. What situation? The babysitting, Juliana said quietly. The emergency childcare when you have to work late. The financial support when you're short on rent. The room went silent except for the hum of my ancient refrigerator. They were threatening to cut me off. My own family was threatening to abandon me unless I admitted I was a failure as a mother. I think you should leave, I said. Natalie, Mom started. Get out, all of you. Get out of my house. They left without another word, Juliana's heels clicking on my hardwood floor like a countdown timer. I locked the door behind them and slumped against it, my hands shaking. 3 days later, I got fired from my marketing job. Couldn't find childcare for the late client meeting. My boss said I was unreliable. That night, after Leo fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen. The cursor blinked in the empty document like a heartbeat. Then I started typing. You called me broken, but I'm still here. 2 weeks after losing my job, I had exactly $43 in my checking account and a refrigerator that hummed louder than my neighbor's motorcycle. Mommy, are we poor now? Leo asked, standing in the kitchen doorway in his dinosaur pajamas. We're just figuring things out, baby. He nodded like that made perfect sense and wandered back to his room. 8-year-olds are surprisingly resilient when the adults in their lives pretend everything's fine. The doorbell rang, and I almost didn't answer it. Couldn't handle another surprise visit from my loving family, but then I heard Olivia's voice through the door. Nat, I know you're in there. I brought groceries. I opened the door to find my best friend holding 2 paper bags and wearing the kind of smile that said she knew exactly how bad things were. You didn't have to. Shut up and help me carry these in. She pushed past me, heading straight for the kitchen. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't cereal? Cereal is nutritious. Lucky Charms doesn't count. She started unpacking the bags. Real food, fresh fruit, actual vegetables. Leo needs more than marshmallows and food coloring. I can't pay you back right now. Did I ask you to? She turned around, hands on her hips. You do the same for me. You have done the same for me. That was true. When Olivia's ex stopped paying child support last year, I'd covered her grocery bill for 2 months without being asked. How's the job hunt going? She asked, loading milk into my fridge. It's not. Nobody wants to hire someone who might need to leave early for kid emergencies. What about the blog thing you mentioned? I told her about my late-night writing sessions, the posts I'd been publishing on a free WordPress site. Mostly just me screaming into the void about single motherhood and family drama. It's nothing, just me venting. How many people are reading it? I don't know, maybe 50? She pulled out her phone and started typing. What's it called again? The Unfiltered Mother. But Olivia, seriously, it's just... Her eyes widened. Nat, this post about the intervention, it has 3,000 shares. What? She turned the phone toward me. There it was, my raw, angry post about my family's ambush, complete with direct quotes from my mother about my chaotic house. The comment section was exploding. Holy shit, someone had written. This is my mother-in-law word for word. I'm crying. This is exactly what my sister did to me after my divorce. Please keep writing. You're saying what the rest of us are thinking. Look at this one, Olivia said, scrolling down. This woman says she's sharing your post in her single moms group. And this one, she's tagging her therapist. I stared at the screen. 3,000 people had read about the worst day of my life, and instead of judging me, they were thanking me. Mommy? Leo appeared in the kitchen doorway. I made you breakfast. He held up a paper plate with 2 pieces of slightly burnt toast, a banana sliced into uneven chunks, and a glass of orange juice that was definitely too full. Oh, sweetheart. My throat tightened. This is perfect. He beamed and set the plate on the counter with the careful concentration of a master chef. I used the step stool, and I didn't cut myself with the knife. You used a knife? The butter knife, for the peanut butter. He pointed to the toast, which was indeed covered in a thick, uneven layer of peanut butter. Olivia, do you want some? I can make more. That's very sweet, buddy, but this is all for your mom. She ruffled his hair. You take good care of her, don't you? She takes care of me too, Leo said seriously. We're a team. After he went back to his room, I sat at the counter eating his perfectly imperfect breakfast, while Olivia read more comments on my blog. Listen to this, she said. I've been following your blog for 2 weeks, and your honesty is incredible. Have you ever thought about turning this into a book? A book? I'm not a writer. You are, though. Look at this response. People are connecting with your voice. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. The subject line made my stomach flip. Book proposal inquiry. The Unfiltered Mother. Olivia, I whispered. What? I clicked the email open. It was from someone named Dominic at a literary agency in New York. Dear Natalie, I read aloud, I've been following your blog for the past week, and I believe your voice and story could resonate with a much larger audience. I love to discuss the possibility of developing your blog posts into a book proposal. Your raw honesty about single motherhood and family dysfunction is exactly what the market needs right now. Olivia grabbed my arm. Are you kidding me? There's more. I kept reading. I particularly connected with your post about the family intervention. The way you captured both the pain and the absurdity of that situation was masterful. I think this could be something special. We stared at each other across my tiny kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my falling apart life. Unpaid bills on the counter, Leo's toys scattered on the floor, the persistent hum of my dying refrigerator. So, Olivia said slowly, what are you going to write back? I looked at the email again, then at the comments still pouring in on my blog post. Hundreds of women sharing their own stories, their own family disasters, their own moments of being called broken. I think, I said, I'm going to tell him yes. 6 months later, I was sitting in a Manhattan coffee shop across from Dominic, watching him flip through the printed pages of my manuscript. This chapter about your childhood, he said, tapping a section with his pen. The birthday party where your mother praised Juliana for sharing her cake, but scolded you for asking for seconds. It's devastating. That's just Tuesday in the Richardson household, I said, then caught myself. Was Tuesday. I don't really talk to them anymore. Good. The anger in your writing is what makes it powerful. He looked up at me. But I need you to go deeper. The intervention chapter is strong, but readers need to understand how you got there. I stirred my coffee, remembering. Juliana was always the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect husband. I was the cautionary tale. Show me that. Don't just tell me your mother favored Juliana. Show me the moment you realized it. That night, back in my apartment, I wrote about Christmas morning when I was 12. How Juliana got the expensive art set she'd asked for, while I got a book about improving your attitude. How Mom spent the entire day praising Juliana's drawings, while criticizing the way I wrapped presents. Leo knocked on my bedroom door around midnight. Mommy, you're typing really loud. Sorry, baby. Did I wake you? He climbed onto my bed, still half asleep. Are you writing the book about mean Grandma Jacqueline? How do you know about that? I heard you talking to Olivia. She said you're going to be famous. I saved my document and closed the laptop. Maybe. Would that be okay with you? He considered this seriously. Will we still live here? For now. But we might be able to get a bigger place eventually. With a yard? Maybe. And a dog? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. 3 months later, Dominic called with news. We have offers from 4 publishers. The highest bid is from HarperCollins, 6 figures, Nat. You did it. I was standing in my kitchen, still in my pajamas at 2 p.m. when he told me. Leo was at school, and I had nowhere to be because I was still unemployed, but suddenly that didn't matter. 6 figures, I repeated, plus a 2-book deal. They want a sequel. After I hung up, I called Olivia. Holy shit, she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You're going to be a real author. I'm already a real author. Now I'm just going to be a paid author. We're celebrating tonight. I'm bringing wine. The book launched 8 months later. The Unfiltered Mother, Surviving Family Dysfunction and Single Parenthood, debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Good Morning America wants you on next week, Dominic said, and Ellen's People called, plus about 15 podcast requests. Ellen? As in Ellen DeGeneres? The one and only. Nat, this is huge. The book is resonating with everyone. Single moms, women with toxic families, anyone who's ever felt judged for not being perfect. The interviews were surreal. Sitting across from morning show hosts, talking about my family's intervention like it was ancient history instead of something that still made my chest tight. Your mother and sister haven't reached out since the book was published? The host asked. No. And honestly, I'm not surprised. They don't like being held accountable for their actions. Some critics have said you're airing dirty laundry for profit. How do you respond to that? I'd say those critics probably have some dirty laundry of their own they're afraid to examine. My story isn't unique. That's why it's resonating with so many people. Toxic family dynamics are everywhere. I just had the courage to name them. The book tour was a whirlwind of airports and hotel rooms, but Leo came with me when he could. He loved the fancy hotels and room service, and he was surprisingly good at entertaining himself during my events. "Mommy," he said one night in Chicago, "that lady at your book signing was crying." A lot of people cry at my events, buddy. Sometimes it's good to cry. Because they have mean families too? Some of them, yeah. He thought about this while brushing his teeth. "I'm glad we don't have to see Grandma Jacqueline anymore." "Me too, sweetheart." Back home, I was organizing my office, my actual office now, in our new 2-bedroom apartment, when I found a notebook from those first desperate weeks. My handwriting was shaky, desperate. How do I prove I'm not broken when everyone says I am? Now I knew the answer. You don't prove you're not broken. You prove that broken doesn't mean worthless. I opened my laptop and started a new document. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. "Toxic traditions. Breaking the mother-daughter curse," I typed. It was time to tell the rest of the story. 2 years after my book hit the bestseller list, my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The caller ID made my stomach drop. Juliana. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello? Natalie?" Her voice was shaky, raw. I didn't know who else to call. I muted the TV and sat up straighter on my couch. "What's wrong?" "Everything." She let out a sob. "Kai left. He packed a bag and left. Said he couldn't do this anymore." "Do it anymore?" "The marriage, the pretending. Sarah's been acting out at school, and he said it was my fault for being too controlling. Can you believe that? Me? Controlling?" I could absolutely believe that, but I stayed quiet. "I found out he's been having an affair," she continued, "for months, maybe longer, with his secretary, because apparently my life is a fucking cliche now." Juliana never swore. In 38 years, I'd maybe heard her say damn twice. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "That's awful." "Sarah won't talk to me. She just screams and slams doors. Yesterday she told her teacher that she hates living with me. The school counselor called. Kids act out when their world gets turned upside down. But I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked. "You always seem to handle Leo's difficult phases so well, even when I said you didn't." There it was, the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get. "Have you tried family therapy?" I asked. Kai refused, said therapists just make problems worse by digging up old issues. "I meant for you and Sarah, without Kai." Silence. Then, "I never thought of that." Of course she hadn't. In Juliana's world, therapy was something other people needed. Broken people. People like me. "I should probably go," she said. I wanted to hear a friendly voice. After she hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the draft of my second book. Chapter 1 was titled The Golden Child's Fall. I'd been working on it for months, but something had been missing. Now I knew what. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Natalie, this is your mother. Juliana told me she spoke with you last night. We need to talk." I screenshot the text and sent it to Olivia with the caption, "Guess who's back?" She called immediately. "Oh, hell no. What did she want?" "Haven't called her back yet, but I'm guessing it's about Juliana's situation." "Are you going to?" "Maybe. For research purposes." I called Mom back that afternoon, putting the phone on speaker while I folded Leo's laundry. "Finally," she said, instead of hello. "I've been waiting by the phone all day." "I was busy. What did you need?" "It's about Juliana. She's going through a very difficult time and she needs family support." "I'm aware." She called me. "Good. Then you know how serious this is. That man has destroyed her self-esteem, and now Sarah is acting out because of the instability." "Kids need consistency during divorce," I agreed. "Exactly. Which is why I think you should talk to her. You've been through this single mother thing, and you seem to have figured it out. The single mother thing, like it was a hobby I'd picked up. What exactly are you asking me to do? Give her advice. Share your strategies for managing difficult behavior. You wrote a whole book about it. I wrote a book about surviving family dysfunction and finding my voice, not a parenting manual. Well, whatever. The point is, you have experience Juliana needs. I held up one of Leo's t-shirts, smoothing out the wrinkles. And what's in it for me? What do you mean? I mean, 2 years ago, you and Juliana staged an intervention to tell me I was a terrible mother. You threatened to cut off all support unless I admitted I needed professional help. Now you want my parenting advice? That was different. You were struggling then. I was struggling because you made me struggle. You withdrew childcare support right before I lost my job. We were trying to help you see that you needed to make changes. And now Juliana needs to make changes. So where's her intervention? Silence stretched between us. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to find a way to make this my fault. Juliana's situation is temporary, she finally said. A marriage falling apart isn't the same as your lifestyle choices. My lifestyle choices? Being a single mother by choice. Having a child without a stable relationship. That was your decision. I set down the laundry and picked up my phone. Mom, I'm going to hang up now. Wait. No, I'm done. If Juliana wants parenting advice, she can buy my book like everyone else. I hung up and immediately opened my laptop. The cursor was blinking in chapter 2. When the scapegoat becomes the savior. I started typing. My mother called today to ask for parenting advice. The same woman who told me I was an unfit mother now wants to know my secrets for raising a well-adjusted child. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. My phone buzzed with another text from Juliana. I know things were bad between us before, but I really need help. Please. I screenshot that too and kept writing. I spent the next week doing what any good author does. Research. Except my research involved scrolling through Juliana's social media like a detective. Her Instagram told quite a story. The perfect family photos had stopped abruptly 3 months ago. Before that, it was all carefully curated shots of family dinners, Sarah's soccer games, and Kai in expensive suits. But if you looked closely, you could see the cracks. In one photo from Sarah's 12th birthday, Kai was checking his phone while everyone else sang. In another, Sarah was mid-eye roll while Juliana posed with a homemade cake. The comments were all hearts and fire emojis, but the body language screamed dysfunction. Mommy, who's that? Leo asked, peering over my shoulder at a photo of Sarah. Your cousin. Remember Sarah? The one who told me I was weird for liking dinosaurs? That's the one. Why are you looking at pictures of her? Good question. I'm just checking on family. Leo gave me the look he'd perfected over the years, the one that said he knew I was up to something but wasn't sure what. My phone rang. Olivia. Okay, I did some digging, she said without preamble. You know how my ex works at that country club where all the rich people hang out? Yeah? Kai's been bringing different women there for months, always during lunch, always to the same private dining room. The staff all know about it. How many different women? At least 3 that anyone can remember. But here's the kicker. One of them is Sarah's former teacher from last year. I nearly dropped my phone. Her teacher? Yep, Miss Rodriguez. Sarah apparently had a huge crush on her, talked about her constantly at home. Can you imagine finding out your dad is sleeping with someone you looked up to? No wonder Sarah was acting out. Her whole world had imploded, and she probably didn't even understand why. There's more, Olivia continued. My ex says Kai's been bragging about how he's finally free and how Juliana was suffocating him with her need for perfection. Suffocating him how? Apparently she monitored his social media, checked his phone, made him account for every hour he wasn't at work. Classic controlling behavior, but also classic response to knowing your partner is cheating. After we hung up, I opened my podcast recording app. I'd been doing a weekly show called Unfiltered Conversations since my book took off, and this week's episode was supposed to be about setting boundaries with extended family. Perfect timing. Hi, everyone. It's Natalie, and welcome back to Unfiltered Conversations. Today, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately. What happens when the people who hurt you come back asking for help? I hit record and kept going. I've been thinking about family dynamics, about how some people are designated as the problem, while others get to be the solution, and what happens when those roles suddenly flip. My phone buzzed with a text from Juliana. I listened to your podcast, the one about toxic mothers. It made me think about some things. I ignored it and kept recording. Here's the thing about family trauma. It doesn't just disappear because someone needs you. The people who called you broken don't get to suddenly decide you're wise. The people who withdrew support don't get to ask for yours. Another text. I think I owe you an apology. Can we talk? I turned my phone face down. But here's what's interesting. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are also the people who taught you the most about who you don't want to be. Sometimes their cruelty becomes your strength. That evening, Leo was doing homework at the kitchen table when my laptop chimed with an email. The subject line made me pause. From your mother, setting the record straight. What's wrong, Mommy? Leo looked up from his math worksheet. Nothing, baby. Just work stuff. I opened the email. It was 3 pages long, single-spaced, and started with, I feel compelled to address some of the inaccuracies in your recent podcast episode. She went on to explain how the intervention was necessary and how I'd mischaracterized their intentions. She detailed every way I'd been a difficult child and how Juliana had always been naturally responsible. She ended with a paragraph about how my success had gone to my head and made me vindictive toward family. I forwarded the entire email to Dominic with a note. Chapter 3. Material. He called within an hour. This is gold, Nat. Pure gold. She's literally proving every point you made in the first book. She has no idea, does she? None whatsoever. She thinks she's defending herself, but she's actually confessing. Save everything. Every text, every email, every voicemail. This book is going to be explosive. After Leo went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in a new document. Chapter 5. The Gaslighter's Manifesto, I typed. Then I copy-pasted my mother's entire email, word for word. My phone buzzed with one more text from Juliana. You were right. About Mom. About everything. I see it now. I screenshot the text and added it to the chapter. Some stories write themselves. You just have to be patient enough to let them unfold. They showed up on a Saturday morning without calling first. I was in my pajamas, drinking coffee and watching Leo build an elaborate Lego city on the living room floor when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Juliana and Mom standing on my doorstep. Juliana looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Dark circles under her eyes, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt. Mom stood behind her in full armor, pressed slacks, pearls, lipstick perfectly applied despite the early hour. Shit, I muttered. Bad word, Leo said without looking up from his Legos. Sorry, buddy. Can you play in your room for a bit? I have some visitors. Is it Grandma Jacqueline? Smart kid. Yeah. Can I stay in my room until she leaves? Absolutely. I opened the door after Leo disappeared down the hallway. We need to talk, Mom said, pushing past me into my apartment. Good morning to you, too. Juliana followed more hesitantly. I'm sorry we didn't call first. Mom insisted we come over. Of course she did. I closed the door and turned to face them. What do you want? Mom was already surveying my living room with that familiar disapproving expression. This place is much nicer than your old apartment. Success will do that. About that, Mom said, settling into my armchair like she owned it. We need to discuss your book project. My book project? The sequel, Juliana said quietly. The one about toxic family systems. I know you're writing about us. I poured myself more coffee, taking my time. What makes you think that? Your podcast, Mom snapped. All those thinly veiled references to family drama and people who withdraw support. You're clearly planning to exploit our private business for profit again. Again? The first book was bad enough. Do you know how embarrassing it was when my book club recognized the intervention story? When they started asking questions about my parenting? How embarrassing for you. Juliana shifted uncomfortably on my couch. Nat, I know I hurt you. I know we both did. But dragging this out publicly isn't going to help anyone. Help anyone? Or help you? Sarah's already struggling with the divorce. If you publish details about our family, about Kai's affairs, about my mistakes. Wait! I set down my coffee cup. How do you know I know about Kai's affairs? Juliana's face went pale. I assumed you'd heard rumors. Which affair specifically are you worried about me mentioning? There's only one that matters, she said quietly. Sarah's teacher, Miss Rodriguez. Sarah found out last week. How? She saw them together at the mall. Kai was supposed to be taking Sarah shopping for school clothes, but he brought her along. Sarah recognized her immediately. Mom leaned forward. This is exactly why we can't have you writing about family business. That child has been through enough without having her private trauma broadcast to the world. You mean like you broadcast my private trauma to your book club? That's different. How? Because you put it in a book first. The circular logic was making my head spin. So let me get this straight. You're upset that I wrote about how you staged an intervention to call me an unfit mother, but you're also upset that people found out you staged an intervention to call me an unfit mother? We never called you unfit, Juliana protested. You literally said Leo needed to be removed from my chaotic environment unless I got professional help. We were concerned. You were controlling, just like you controlled Kai until he couldn't stand it anymore. Juliana flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair, isn't it? Olivia told me you monitored his phone, tracked his location, made him account for every minute he wasn't at work. Because I knew he was lying. So instead of leaving or confronting him directly, you became a prison warden. And now you're surprised he escaped? Mom stood up abruptly. That's enough. Juliana came here to ask for your help, not to be attacked. Help with what exactly? Sarah, Juliana said. She won't talk to me. She's failing 2 classes, got suspended for fighting, and yesterday she asked if she could live with Kai full time. And you want me to do what about that? Talk to her. You're good with kids, and she might listen to someone outside the situation. I stared at my sister, really looked at her. The perfect facade was completely gone. She looked desperate, broken, human for maybe the first time in her adult life. You want me to help you, I said slowly, after you spent years telling everyone I was a terrible mother. I was wrong, she whispered. I was so wrong about everything. Mom's head snapped toward Juliana. Don't say that. We were trying to help her. No, Mom. We were trying to control her. Just like I tried to control Kai. Just like you tried to control both of us our whole lives. The room went dead silent. Even the traffic noise from outside seemed to pause. I've already written half the book, I said, finally, including Mom's 3-page email explaining why the intervention was necessary. Mom's face went white. You wouldn't. I would. I am. The book comes out next spring. You can't do that to your family. I smiled. Watch me. Toxic Traditions, Breaking the Mother-Daughter Curse. Hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list 3 days after its release. By day 5, my phone was ringing nonstop. The Today Show wants you Monday morning, Dominic said during our daily check-in call, and CNN tonight. Plus your TikTok video reading your mother's email has 2 million views. I was sitting in my home office, watching the numbers climb on my laptop screen. The TikTok had been Olivia's idea, just me, sitting at my kitchen table, reading Mom's 3-page manifesto word for word in a calm, measured voice. The comments are insane, I told him. Women are sharing their own family horror stories. Someone started a hashtag, Toxic traditions. The publisher wants to fast-track a third book. They're calling it a cultural phenomenon. Leo knocked on my office door. "Mommy, there's a girl here to see you." I looked up to find Sarah standing in my hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "I'll call you back," I told Dominic. Sarah was taller than I remembered, all knees and elbows and attitude. She had Juliana's blonde hair, but Kai's sharp features, and right now those features were arranged in a scowl. "Mom said I should talk to you," she said without preamble. "Do you want to talk to me?" She shrugged. "Not really, but she's crying all the time now and I'm sick of it. Come in. Leo, can you give us some privacy?" Leo nodded and disappeared back to his room. Sarah perched on the edge of my couch like she might bolt at any second. "So," I said, settling into my chair, "how are you handling everything? You mean my dad cheating with my favorite teacher and my mom turning into a crazy person? That's a lot for anyone to handle. Everyone at school knows. Miss Rodriguez got fired, and now all the kids are asking me about it. Some of them have read your stupid book." "Which parts?" "The part about Mom being a control freak. The part about Grandma Jacqueline being manipulative. The part where you call our whole family toxic." She said it like an accusation, but there was something else in her voice. Relief, maybe. "What do you think about those parts?" Sarah was quiet for a long time, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "I think you're right," she said finally, "but I hate that you're right." "Why?" "Because now I don't know who to trust. If Mom was lying about you being a bad parent, what else was she lying about? If Grandma Jacqueline is as manipulative as you say, then why did I always feel like I had to be perfect around her?" Smart kid. Smarter than any of us had given her credit for. "What do you want to do about it?" "I don't know. Dad wants me to live with him, but he's got his new girlfriend now, and she's only like 10 years older than me. It's gross." "What about staying with your mom?" "She keeps asking me how I'm feeling every 5 minutes and trying to hug me. It's like she read a parenting book and decided to try everything at once." I almost laughed. Juliana probably had read a parenting book. Probably several. "Would you maybe want to stay here sometimes?" I asked. "Like weekends or whatever. Give everyone some space to figure things out." Sarah looked up surprised. "You'd let me do that?" "Sure. Leo would love having a cousin around, and I have a guest room." "But I was mean to you guys before. At family dinners and stuff. You were 12 and dealing with a lot of family pressure. I get it." She nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot. In your book, you talk about how Grandma Jacqueline made you feel like you were never good enough. Did that ever stop? The feeling?" "Yeah." I considered lying, giving her some inspirational answer about self-love and healing. But Sarah deserved honesty. "Sometimes it still creeps in," I said. "But now I know it's her voice, not mine. And I can tell the difference." "How?" "Her voice tells me I'm not enough. My voice tells me I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." Sarah stayed for dinner. Leo showed her his Lego city, and she helped him build a castle without once calling him weird. When Juliana came to pick her up, Sarah asked if she could come back next weekend. "Of course," I said. "Anytime." After they left, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my door. My name was written on it in Mom's careful handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a law firm's letterhead. A cease and desist letter demanding I stop defaming the family and threatening legal action if I continued promoting the book. I took a photo of the letter and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "When you tell the truth and they call it defamation." Within an hour, it had 50,000 views and counting. The comments were brutal, not toward me, but toward the kind of mother who would sue her own daughter for telling her story. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your book saved my mom's life. She finally left my abusive dad after reading it. Thank you." I screenshot the message and added it to my growing folder of reader responses. Tomorrow, I had 3 more interviews, and next week I was flying to LA for a book signing. But tonight, I was just going to sit in my living room with Leo, watching him build worlds out of plastic blocks, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be silent. The book signing in downtown Portland was packed. The line stretched around the block, and I could see people clutching worn copies of both my books, some with sticky notes marking their favorite passages. "Next," I said, smiling at a woman who looked to be in her 50s. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, sliding her book across the table. "I cut contact with my mother after reading Toxic Traditions. Best decision I ever made." I signed her book and handed it back. "How are you doing with that?" "Some days are hard, but most days, I feel free." The line moved steadily. Mothers, daughters, even a few men who'd recognized their own families in my words. Each person had a story, and most of them ended the same way. I thought I was the only one. "Excuse me." I looked up to see a teenager, maybe 16, holding a copy of my first book. "This is going to sound weird," she said, "but your book saved my mom's life. She was in this really bad relationship, and everyone kept telling her to try harder, go to counseling, fix herself. But after she read your chapter about the intervention, she realized she wasn't the problem. Where's your mom now?" "She's outside, too nervous to come in. But she wanted me to tell you that she left him last month, and we're doing okay." I signed her book and wrote a note. "For your mom, you were never the problem. You were always enough." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Can I hug you?" "Of course." As the evening wound down, I noticed a familiar figure near the back of the bookstore. Sarah was browsing the young adult section, trying to look casual. "Hey," I said, walking over after the last person left. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Mom's in the car. She drove me, but she's too embarrassed to come in." "Embarrassed?" "Everyone's talking about the books. Her book club, the other moms at school, even some of the teachers. She knows what people are saying about her." I glanced toward the parking lot. Through the window, I could see Juliana sitting in her car, staring at her phone. "How's she doing?" "Better, I think. She started seeing a therapist, and she's not checking my phone anymore or asking me to account for every minute of my day." "That's good. She wanted me to give you this." Sarah pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "She wrote it like 10 times. I unfolded the note. Juliana's handwriting was shaky, uncertain. "Nat, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. About Mom, about the intervention, about me trying to control everyone around me. I'm working on it. Thank you for taking care of Sarah when I couldn't take care of myself. She's lucky to have you in her life. We both are. Jay." "She's been different since the divorce finalized," Sarah said. "Like she's finally allowed to be human instead of perfect." "And how are you with all of this?" Sarah shrugged. "It's weird having everyone know our business, but also kind of relieving. Like, I don't have to pretend our family was perfect anymore." "What about your dad?" "He's engaged to Miss Rodriguez. They want me to be in their wedding." She made a face. "I told them I'd rather eat glass." I laughed. "That's fair. Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Mom and Grandma Jacqueline?" I considered the question. "I don't know. Forgiveness isn't something you do once and then it's done. It's more like letting go of the need for them to be different than they are." "That sounds hard." "It is. But holding on to anger is harder." Sarah nodded like that made sense. "I should probably go. Mom's been sitting out there for 20 minutes. Tell her she's welcome to come in next time. The worst that can happen is someone recognizes her from the book." "She's terrified of that." "I know. But maybe being recognized isn't the worst thing. Maybe it's the first step toward being real." After Sarah left, I packed up my signing supplies and walked to my car. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo. "How was the book thing?" "Did lots of people come?" "Packed house," I texted back. "Home in an hour." As I drove through the quiet streets, I thought about the woman who thanked me for helping her cut contact with her mother. about the teenager whose mom had left her abusive relationship, about Sarah learning that imperfection was okay. I thought about Mom's cease and desist letter, which had backfired spectacularly when people saw it online. Her lawyer had quietly dropped the case when the internet backlash started affecting his other clients. I thought about Juliana, sitting in her car outside the bookstore, too ashamed to face the consequences of her actions, but still trying to support her daughter. And I thought about Leo, waiting for me at home with Olivia, probably building something elaborate out of Legos and eating too much ice cream. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light was on, and I could see them through the window, Leo showing Olivia his latest creation, both of them laughing at something on his tablet. My phone buzzed with one more message, this one from an unknown number. I bought your book today and read it in one sitting. I'm calling my therapist tomorrow. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy. I screenshot the message and added it to my collection. Tomorrow I'd start outlining my third book. Tonight, I was going home to my son and my chosen family. Revenge hadn't tasted sweet like I'd expected. It had tasted like truth, sharp and clean and necessary. And that was enough.
The day Wesley left, he didn't even look me in the eyes. He just packed his expensive suits into designer luggage while I stood in our bedroom doorway, still holding the phone with the photos my cousin had accidentally on purpose sent me. Photos of them together. Photos that explained all the late nights at the office, all the sudden business trips, all the times he couldn't make it to family dinners because he was working. My name is Caitlin, and at 38 years old, I watch my life crumble in the space of an afternoon. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours," he said, zipping up the last bag. "We should keep this civil." Civil? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Like sneaking around with my cousin Viviana was civil. He finally looked up, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not guilt, just annoyance. "You were always so focused on your career, Caitlin. What did you expect?" I was speechless. My career. I'd given up my position at the architecture firm to support his law practice, to host his client dinners, to be the perfect wife he'd said he needed. The next few weeks passed in a blur of papers to sign and accounts to divide. Half our savings disappeared overnight. The house had to be sold. My family, the same people who'd celebrated our wedding 5 years ago, started whispering. Then the whispers turned to open commentary. "Well, you know how Caitlin is," my sister Penny said at a family dinner I wasn't invited to, but heard about later. Always had her head in the clouds. Men need attention. My Aunt Greta was worse. She cornered me at the grocery store, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. "You should have seen it coming, dear. Viviana was always more suited for Wesley, more traditional." Traditional? Right, because nothing says traditional like stealing your cousin's husband. When the dust settled, I had nowhere to go. My father, Lonnie, offered me the basement of my grandmother's old house, the house he'd inherited last year. He didn't say much else, just handed me the key and walked away, shoulders slumped like I was his great disappointment. The basement was exactly as I remembered it from childhood, dark, musty, with water stains on the concrete walls and spiders in every corner. I set up my air mattress under the single window well, arranged my remaining clothes in an old dresser, and tried to pretend this was temporary. That first night, I could hear them all upstairs. My father had invited the family over for dinner, everyone except me. Their laughter filtered through the floorboards, along with the scraping of chairs and the clinking of glasses. "Poor Caitlin," I heard Penny say, her voice carrying through the heating vent. "She really hit rock bottom, didn't she?" "Well," Greta replied, "at least she has somewhere to stay. Though I doubt she'll be invited to the family trip next month. We can't have her energy ruining the mood." More laughter. Someone made a joke about basement dwellers. I pulled my knees to my chest and pressed my face against them, feeling the hot tears slide down my cheeks. Then Viviana's voice, sweet as poison. Wesley and I were thinking of hosting Thanksgiving this year in our new house. Our new house? The one they'd bought with his half of our savings. I lifted my head and looked around the basement. In the corner, a spider was building its web, methodically connecting one thread to another, creating something from nothing. I watched it work as the voices continued above, as they planned their lives around my absence, as they wrote me off as the family failure. My phone buzzed, a group text I hadn't been removed from yet. Vacation plans, all of them coordinating which luxury resort to book. Viviana suggested the one Wesley and I had honeymooned at. No one objected. I got up slowly and walked to the small bathroom mirror, cracked at one corner. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who'd stood in designer heels at charity galas last year. This woman had shadows under her eyes and defeat in her posture. But as I stared at my reflection, something else flickered in those eyes, something hard and cold and determined. They thought this was my ending, the cautionary tale they'd tell at family gatherings. Remember what happened to Caitlin? I looked back at the spider, still weaving its web. Patient, methodical, invisible until it was too late. A smile crept across my face, the first real one in weeks. They all thought the story was over, that I'd fade into the basement and disappear. But they were wrong. I wasn't at rock bottom, I was at my beginning. I pulled out my laptop, the one thing I'd insisted on keeping in the divorce, and opened a new browser window. Real estate investment strategies, I typed. Then, how to create an LLC. Above me, the laughter continued. Let them laugh. They thought it was over. But I'd just begun. 3 months into my basement life, I discovered something interesting. Real estate seminars love desperate people. Every weekend, I'd slip out of the house before dawn and drive to hotel conference rooms filled with others like me, people looking for a way up from rock bottom. The key is finding motivated sellers, the presenter said one Saturday, his smile too white under the fluorescent lights. People who need to sell quickly, quietly, and below market value. I took notes until my hand cramped. Between seminars, I watched every YouTube video I could find about property investment. My laptop became my lifeline, my education, my escape from the whispers upstairs. Then came the call that changed everything. Caitlin? My Aunt Andrea's voice wavered on the phone. I need some advice. I hadn't heard from Andrea in months. She'd been one of the quieter ones during my fall from grace, neither defending nor attacking me. Now she sounded afraid. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up on my air mattress. The medical bills? She paused. I can't keep up. The cottage? I think I need to sell it. The cottage. My grandmother's favourite property, the one she'd used as a summer home, the one everyone assumed would go to Greta eventually. Have you told anyone else? I asked carefully. No, Andrea whispered. I'm too embarrassed. Greta would, you know how she gets. I did know. I also knew something no one else did. Grandma had left me a small inheritance. Nothing huge, but enough, if used carefully. I might know someone who could help, I said, but it would need to be handled quietly. 2 days later, I sat across from Andrea in a small coffee shop, sliding papers across the table. My newly formed LLC's name sat at the top. Phoenix Rising Properties. This is below market value, she said, frowning at the offer. It's cash, I replied. No waiting, no real estate agents, no family drama, just a quick private sale. She signed that afternoon. No one in the family knew. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. A family group text about Grandma's estate entering probate. Can't wait to see how this all shakes out, Penny wrote, though some people obviously won't be getting anything. 3 laughing emojis followed. Obviously, Viviana replied. Some people don't deserve to inherit anything. I smiled at my phone, thinking of the deed sitting in my LLC's name, if they only knew. Later that week, I had a doctor's appointment. Routine checkup, nothing special. In the waiting room, I picked up a magazine and flipped to the horoscope section, something I'd never bothered with before. Your inheritance will not come as expected, it read, but as earned. I laughed out loud, earning strange looks from other patients. That evening, I drove past Andrea's cottage, my cottage now. It needed work, peeling paint, sagging gutters, overgrown garden, but I could see its potential, just like I could see the potential in my own slow, quiet revenge. My phone buzzed, another family group text. Big news, Greta wrote. Family reunion next month at the main house. Everyone's expected to attend. A pause, then, well, almost everyone. I'll bring champagne, Viviana chimed in. Wesley just made partner at his firm. I switched off my phone and walked the perimeter of the cottage, making notes on my tablet. The property needed about $20,000 in repairs. Once fixed, it would be worth triple what I'd paid. A car slowed as it passed, and I recognized Ivan, my sister's husband, behind the wheel. He squinted at me through the window but didn't stop. I waved cheerfully, just another stranger admiring the property. That night, back in my basement, I could hear them talking about the cottage sale upstairs. Andrea sold it, Greta's voice was shrill, without telling anyone. To whom? Some investment company, Ivan replied. I drove by today, saw someone looking at it. This is ridiculous, Penny added. That cottage should have stayed in the family. What about the inheritance? I pulled out my laptop and opened my investment spreadsheet. Andrea's cottage was just the beginning. I'd done my research. I knew who else in the family was struggling. Uncle Benjamin's farm was mortgaged to the hilt. Greta had made some bad investments lately. Even Ivan, for all his bluster, was leveraged more than he let on. They all thought they were waiting for an inheritance. None of them realized they were sitting on properties they'd need to sell long before that. My phone buzzed one last time, a private message from Wesley. Heard you're still in the basement. Need help finding an apartment? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my browser and started researching property tax records. One piece at a time, I thought. One quiet purchase after another. Let them laugh. Let them plan their reunions without me. Let them think I was still that broken woman in the basement. I had work to do. Uncle Benjamin's hands shook as he signed the papers. We sat in a quiet diner 2 towns over where no one would recognize us. His once proud shoulders were slumped. His farmer's tan faded after months of avoiding creditors. You're sure your buyer will let me stay on as caretaker? He asked, his voice rough. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. The LLC needs someone who knows the property. You'll have a place to live, a small salary. No one needs to know you sold. He pushed the papers back across the sticky diner table. Another property for Phoenix Rising LLC, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. That afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from Penny. Someone's buying up family properties. Ivan's looking into it. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I typed back. Hard to know much from the basement. Added a sad emoji for effect. Minutes later, I heard her stomping around upstairs talking to Ivan. She's useless. Probably doesn't even know what an LLC is. I smiled at my ceiling. The family meeting that weekend was predictably tense. I wasn't invited, of course, but I could hear everything through the heating vent. They gathered in the dining room above my basement apartment, their voices carrying clearly. This is suspicious, Ivan declared. Same LLC buying everything. Has to be someone who knows our situation. Well, it's not like they're stealing anything, Viviana said. People are choosing to sell. Because they're desperate, Greta snapped. And speaking of desperate, my investment group just collapsed. Everything I put in, gone. The silence that followed was heavy. I closed my eyes, picturing their faces. Counting down in my head, 3, 2, 1. I might have to sell the house, Greta whispered. The eruption was immediate, everyone talking at once, offering suggestions, making demands. I opened my laptop and started preparing the paperwork. I'd been waiting for this. 2 days later, my scout, a retired real estate agent I'd hired, made Greta an offer through Phoenix Rising LLC. She accepted within hours, thinking she'd outsmarted the buyer by demanding a quick close. The family group chat exploded again. Penny, another property gone. Ivan, this is getting ridiculous. Who is buying everything? Viviana, at least we're secure. Wesley's firm is doing amazing. Greta, I got a good price, better than any of you offered to help. I closed the chat and drove to the Victorian estate, the crown jewel of the family properties. I'd bought it 3 months ago when another aunt needed to pay for her husband's medical care. No one had connected the dots yet. The renovation crews were making good progress. New roof, updated electrical, restored hardwood floors. This was where the family had held every major event for generations, where Wesley and I had our wedding reception, where he danced with Viviana while I chatted with donors for his firm. Miss Caitlin, one of the workers called down from a ladder, where do you want the new chandelier? Centre of the ballroom, I replied. Make it shine. A car pulled into the driveway. Wendy, my cousin, Benjamin's daughter. She'd been quiet during my divorce, neither attacking nor defending. Now she walked toward me, her eyes taking in the renovation work. Quite a project, she said carefully. The new owner must be invested in the family history. I met her gaze steadily. I'm sure they are. She nodded slowly, something flickering behind her eyes. Recognition? Suspicion? But she said nothing more, just turned and left. That evening, Penny hosted a family brunch. I watched the Instagram stories roll in. Mimosas, laughter, Viviana draped over Wesley's arm. Then Penny's voice, slightly slurred. Whoever's buying these properties is going to be sorry when the will is finalised. They don't know what's coming. I was walking to my car when it happened. My keys slipped from my hand, clattering on the pavement. As I bent to retrieve them, I heard a sharp intake of breath. Wendy stood nearby, staring at my keychain, specifically at the small metal logo of Phoenix Rising LLC. Our eyes met. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She glanced at the Victorian estate behind us, then back at me. Understanding dawned on her face. Well, she said softly, that explains a lot. I waited for her to say more, to run inside and expose everything. Instead, she smiled. A real smile, not the fake ones I'd grown used to from family. The chandelier will look beautiful, she said, then walked away. I stood there, keys in hand, watching her go. The sun was setting behind the Victorian estate, making the new windows gleam like fire. From inside, I could hear the renovation crew working, transforming the space that had witnessed so many family dramas. My phone buzzed. A new post from Viviana. A selfie of her and Wesley in front of the main house, champagne glasses in hand. The caption read, "We know who wins in the end." I pulled a match from my pocket. I'd been using them to test the new gas fireplaces. Struck it against the box, watched the small flame dance. Not quite, I whispered, smiling at the burning match. Not quite yet. There's definitely a pattern, Even announced, spreading papers across Penny's kitchen island. I watched through the window from the garden, pretending to weed the flower beds I'd secretly bought last month. Every property sold in the last year has gone to Phoenix Rising LLC. Penny leaned over his shoulder, her reading glasses perched on her nose. But who owns it? There has to be a paper trail. It's all perfectly legal, Gibbon muttered. Clean transactions, fair market values. Someone knows exactly what they're doing. I pulled another weed, hiding my smile behind my gardening hat. The morning sun was warm on my back as I listened to their frustration drift through the open window. "Did you see what they did to Greta's house?" Penny asked. "Complete renovation, top of the line, everything." "And she sold it for a steal," Ivan growled. Thought she was being clever, rushing the sale. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, and walked to my car. Through the kitchen window, I could see them hunched over their paperwork, trying to solve the mystery that lived in their basement. The Victorian estate was my next stop. The chandelier had been installed yesterday, and I wanted to see it in the daylight. As I pulled up, a familiar car was parked out front, Wendy's blue sedan. She stood in the ballroom, staring up at the crystal masterpiece catching morning light. "It's exactly like the one from our childhood," she said without turning around. "The one that was here for your wedding." "Better," I replied. "This one's wired to modern standards." Wendy turned to face me. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the basement." She nodded slowly. "And no one suspects? Not even a little?" "They're too busy looking down to look around." A laugh bubbled up from her throat. "Greta's been insufferable about selling her house. Keeps saying she outsmarted some corporate vulture." She paused. "She has no idea she sold it to you, does she?" "None of them do." Wendy walked to one of the tall windows, running her hand along the restored trim. "I remember when they all turned on you. After Wesley. After everything. I should have said something." "But you didn't." "No," she admitted. "I didn't." The sound of tyres on gravel interrupted us. Through the window, we watched Viviana's red sports car pull up. She stepped out, designer sunglasses in place, phone in hand. "Quick," I said, "through the back." We slipped out just as Viviana entered through the front, her voice carrying, "Yes, Wesley, I'm checking it out now. Someone's renovating it. Maybe we can buy it for our anniversary." Later that afternoon, I sat in my basement, watching the family group chat explode. Viviana, "You won't believe what they've done to the Victorian. It's gorgeous." Penny, "Who's they? Same buyer?" Ivan, "Has to be. Phoenix Rising LLC strikes again." Greta, "That vulture company. They're destroying our family legacy." Wesley, "Maybe we should make them an offer they can't refuse." I switched to my email, where confirmation of my latest acquisition waited. The pool house Wesley had been eyeing. He hadn't even realized it was available for sale. Amazing what people miss when they're not paying attention. A knock at my basement door startled me. Harvey, Penny's 16-year-old son, stood there with a plate of cookies. "Mum's on a rampage upstairs," he said, setting the plate down. "Something about mysterious buyers and family betrayal." He grinned. "Thought you might be hungry." Harvey was the only one who still treated me normally. Maybe because he was too young to care about family politics, or maybe because he'd seen through the adults' behaviour. "Thanks, Harvey," I said, offering him a cookie. "How's school?" "Better than this drama." He took a bite. "They're all so worried about who's buying everything. Maybe they should worry about why everyone's selling." Smart kid. I made a mental note to remember that when this all came to a head. After he left, I checked my security cameras, a new addition to all my properties. Viviana was still at the Victorian, taking selfies in various rooms, playing pretend in a house she thought she might own someday. My phone buzzed with a text from Wendy. "She's planning to throw her anniversary party there. Says she's going to talk to the owner about renting it." I texted back, "Should I send her a contract?" "You're evil. I love it." I opened my property portfolio spreadsheet, nearly complete now. Just a few more pieces to acquire. The family lawyer, Quentin, had already scheduled the estate settlement meeting for next month. Perfect timing. Another text from Wendy. "When are you going to tell them?" I looked around my basement apartment, at the air mattress I'd kept as a reminder, at the spider webs I'd left untouched in the corners. Soon, this would all be over. Soon, they'd understand what they'd created when they banished me down here. When they've gathered to divide what they think they own, I replied, when they're all together to watch it slip away. The chandelier would make quite a backdrop for that scene. The knock on my basement door came at midnight. I opened it to find Wendy standing there, clutching a bottle of wine and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me. "Really talk." I watched as she settled onto my air mattress, uncorked the wine, and took a long drink straight from the bottle. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. "How much?" she asked. "How much of the family estate do you actually own?" I sat down beside her, accepting the bottle when she passed it. "Want to see?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet. Wendy's eyes widened as she scrolled through the properties, the dates, the amounts. "Holy," she whispered. "You own everything. The Victorian, the cottages, the farmhouse, even the pool house Wesley's been bragging about buying. He doesn't know it yet, but yes." She handed the laptop back, shaking her head. "And the money, where did you—" "I sold my engagement ring," I said. "Used it as seed money for the first property. After that, it was just careful planning and good timing. The family's going to lose their minds. That's the plan." Wendy took another drink, then surprised me by laughing. "You know what? I'm not even mad. They deserve this." She turned to face me fully. "I'm sorry, Caitlin, for not standing up for you when everything happened, for letting them treat you like that." The apology hit me harder than I expected. It was the first one I'd received since Wesley left. "Thank you," I said quietly. "So what happens next?" she asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A notification from the family group chat. "Quentin, estate settlement meeting scheduled for next Friday, 2 p.m. at the Victorian estate. Attendance mandatory for all beneficiaries." The responses flooded in. Penny, "Finally." Greta, "About time we sorted this out." Ivan, "Bringing all the documentation." Viviana, "Wesley and I will be there. Can't wait." But no invitation for me. Of course not. "They didn't invite you," Wendy observed, reading over my shoulder. "They never do." I picked up my phone and typed a response that would shake them. "I'll be there." The chat exploded. Penny, "What? Why?" Greta, "This is for family only." Viviana, "You're not a beneficiary anymore." Wesley, "Don't make this difficult, Caitlin." I turned off my phone and smiled at Wendy. "Want to help me pick out an outfit?" We spent the next hour going through my small wardrobe, finally settling on a classic black dress I'd kept from my previous life. Simple, elegant, powerful. "They won't know what hit them," Wendy said, holding up the dress. "But what about the legal challenges? Ivan's going to fight this." Every transaction was legal, every sale documented. They signed away their rights one by one. A noise upstairs made us both freeze. Footsteps, then voices. Penny and Ivan coming home late. "Mwah, can't believe she thinks she can just show up," Penny was saying. "After everything." "Let her come," Ivan replied. "It'll just remind everyone why she doesn't belong anymore." Wendy looked at me, concern crossing her face. "Are you sure about this?" I walked to my small window, looking up at the night sky through the window well. "Did you know Viviana posted a selfie today, standing in front of the Victorian's new chandelier? Caption said, 'Future party venue. Some people just don't know what's coming.'" "The irony," Wendy murmured. "I've spent a year in this basement, listening to them plan their lives around my absence, watching them claim what they think is theirs." I turned back to her. "Now it's my turn." She stood, gathering her purse. "Need any help at the meeting?" "Just watch, and maybe bring popcorn." After she left, I lay on my air mattress, staring at the ceiling. Through the vent I could still hear Penny and Ivan talking. "Phoenix Rising LLC," Ivan was saying. There's something we're missing, something right under our—" He trailed off. For a moment, I thought he'd figured it out. But then, Penny changed the subject to their vacation plans, and the moment passed. My phone buzzed one last time, a private message from Wesley. "Whatever you're planning, don't. You'll just embarrass yourself again." I got up and walked to my small bathroom mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the broken one who'd moved down here a year ago. This woman had purpose, power, a plan. I touched the mirror, tracing my reflection. "Some people just don't know what's coming," I whispered, echoing Viviana's caption. "But they will." Upstairs, the house grew quiet. But in my basement, in my fortress, I stayed awake planning. 8 days until the meeting. 8 days until they learned what I'd built while they weren't looking. 8 days until Karma came home to roost. The Victorian estate's grand entrance fell silent as I walked in. Every head turned, conversations dying mid-sentence. I felt their stares like physical things, some confused, some angry, some merely curious. "What is she doing here?" Greta stage whispered to Penny, who stood clutching her designer handbag like a shield. I smiled, smooth as silk, and took my seat at the massive oak table. The same table where, years ago, Wesley had proposed during a family dinner. Now he sat across from me, his face a mask of controlled irritation, Viviana's hand possessively on his arm. Quentin, the family lawyer, cleared his throat. "Now that everyone is here, let's begin." He shuffled his papers, clearly uncomfortable. "We're here to discuss the distribution of remaining family assets and properties." "Remaining?" Ivan interrupted, leaning forward. "What do you mean, remaining?" Quentin adjusted his glasses. "Well, as you know, several properties have been sold over the past year to some corporate vulture," Greta snapped. "Phoenix Rising LLC, we know." I caught Wendy's eye across the table. She was fighting back a smile. "Yes," Quentin continued, "and as these properties were sold legally by their respective owners, they are no longer part of the estate discussion." Wesley straightened in his chair. "But surely we have first right of refusal on any future sales. Family properties should stay in the family." "Actually," I said, speaking for the first time, "they have stayed in the family." The room went still. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to hold its breath. "What are you talking about?" Penny demanded. I opened my briefcase and began laying out documents. "Phoenix Rising LLC is a family company, my company to be specific." The explosion was immediate. "That's impossible," Greta shrieked. "You don't have that kind of money," Ivan sputtered. "You're lying," Wesley said, but his face had gone pale. I slid the incorporation papers across the table. "Everything's legal, every sale documented, every property purchased fairly." Viviana grabbed the papers, her perfectly manicured nails crumpling the edges. But Greta's house? The farmhouse? The cottages?" "All mine," I said quietly, "including this estate, and the chandelier you've been taking selfies under." Penny stood so quickly, her chair toppled backward. "You conniving little—" "Careful," I interrupted. "You're a guest in my house now." "The money," Wesley demanded. "Where did you get the money to start this?" I smiled, saving this moment like a fine wine. "Remember my engagement ring, Wesley? The one you said was too expensive, but you had to have it to show everyone how successful you were." I paused, watching realization dawn on his face. "I sold it, used the money to buy my first property. After that, it was just patience and timing." "But the pool house," Viviana whispered. "We were going to buy it next month." "Already mine," I said. "Wesley signed away his right of first refusal 3 months ago. Maybe read the documents next time." Greta swayed in her seat. "This can't be happening." "Oh, but it is." I stood, smoothing my black dress. "And since we're all here, I should mention that as the new owner, I'm making some changes. The property is no longer available for family events. In fact, I checked my watch, you're all trespassing right now. You can't do this, Penny screamed. Security, I called out. Right on cue, 2 uniformed guards appeared in the doorway. Please escort anyone without explicit permission to be here off the property. This isn't over, Ivan threatened, even as he backed away from the table. Actually, it is. I gathered my papers. Everything was legal. Everything was fair. You all sold willingly. You were just too busy looking down on me to notice who was buying. One by one, they were led out. Wesley was the last to go, standing at the doorway with Viviana clutching his arm. You planned this, he said. All of it. I learned from the best, I replied. You taught me all about betrayal, remember? The door closed behind them, leaving only Wendy, young Harvey and me in the grand room. Through the windows, I could see them gathering on the lawn, gesturing wildly, phones out, probably calling their lawyers. Harvey approached me, a grin on his face. That was awesome, Aunt Caitlin. Wendy laughed, pulling out a bag of microwave popcorn. Told you I'd bring snacks. I walked to the window, watching my family's world crumble just like mine had. But unlike them, I'd built something from my ruins. Mum's gonna lose it, Harvey said, munching on popcorn. She hates not being in control. They all do, Wendy added. Outside, Greta had actually stamped her foot like a child. Wesley was pacing, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. Viviana was crying, mascara running. Should we call the police? Wendy asked, watching them cluster at the gate. I shook my head, smiling. No need, let them stay a while. Sometimes the best revenge is just holding up a mirror and letting people see themselves clearly for the first time. The chandelier caught the afternoon light, sending crystals of light dancing across the room, my house, my victory. Now, I said, turning to Wendy and Harvey, who wants a tour of the renovations? The legal threats started rolling in within hours. Ivan, predictably, led the charge. You manipulated vulnerable family members, he shouted through the phone. We'll have this overturned by Monday. I let him rant, then calmly said, every seller had independent legal counsel, every transaction was witnessed and notarized, but feel free to waste your money on lawyers. Penny tried next, showing up at the Victorian's gate in tears. Please, Caitlin, that house was supposed to be for my children. Like Harvey? I asked through the intercom. The only one who bothered to bring me cookies in the basement. She flinched. That's not fair. Neither was making me the family pariah, but here we are. Greta took a different approach, cornering me at the local coffee shop the next morning. Her designer suit couldn't hide how frantic she looked. Name your price, she hissed, sliding into my booth uninvited. Everyone has one. I stirred my coffee slowly. You're right. Mine was watching you all realize what you've lost, worth every penny. You vindictive little... Careful, I interrupted. Your blood pressure. She stood so quickly, her hip knocked the table, spilling my coffee. You'll regret this. The family will never forgive you. Like they never forgave me for being cheated on. I dabbed at the spill with a napkin. I'll learn to live with it, just like I learned to live in that basement. The barista approached with a concerned look, but I waved her off. It's fine. Family drama. We're not family anymore, Greta spat, storming out. Later that afternoon, I gave Wendy and Harvey a proper tour of the Victorian. The renovations had transformed it while keeping its historic charm. Every room held memories, but now they were mine to reshape. Remember Grandma's last Christmas? Wendy asked, running her hand along the restored banister. Right here, she pulled me aside and said something strange. What was it? She said, watch the quiet ones. They're building while others are bragging. Wendy looked at me. She knew, didn't she, about the inheritance she left you? Before I could answer, Harvey called from the front door. Aunt Caitlin, Uncle Wesley and Aunt Viviana are here. They stood on the porch, Wesley in his expensive suit, Viviana trying to peek past him into the house. 5 minutes, Wesley said. That's all I'm asking. I considered closing the door in his face. Instead, I stepped onto the porch, closing it behind me. Talk. This house, he gestured around. Our wedding reception was here. And you danced with my cousin while I networked for your firm. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was wrong about a lot of things, but this revenge, it's beneath you. No, I said quietly. What's beneath me is that basement you all laughed about. What's beneath me is how you treated me after you chose her. I nodded toward Viviana, who was unsuccessfully trying to appear innocent. This isn't revenge, Wesley. This is karma. You all built it. I just helped it find its way home. We can make a deal, Viviana suddenly burst out. Wesley's firm is doing so well. Like it did when you needed my connections. I turned to her. How's that working out now? Wesley's face hardened. You've made your point. Now let's be reasonable. Reasonable? I laughed. Was it reasonable when you emptied our accounts? When you moved in with my cousin while I was still packing? When you all made me a cautionary tale? Through the window, I could see Wendy and Harvey watching. They'd heard it all before, seen it all before. But this time, the ending was different. Security! I called out. Right on cue, the guards appeared. Mr. Robinson and Miss Elliot were just leaving. This isn't over, Wesley growled as they were escorted to the gate. Actually, it is. I watched them walk to their car. Oh, and Wesley, the pool house you're living in, rent's due next week. I'm raising it to market value. Back inside, Wendy was trying not to laugh. That was better than reality TV. Harvey looked thoughtful. Mum always said you were the family failure, but you're the only one who built something on your own. I hugged him, this nephew who'd seen through the family's facade. Sometimes the best success is the kind no one sees coming. My phone buzzed. Another family group text. They'd created a new one without me, but Wendy kept me in the loop. Penny. She's destroyed this family. Ivan. Lawyers say we can't touch the sales. All legal. Greta. This is what we get for letting her stay in that basement. Wesley. She played us. All of us. I turned off my phone and walked to the grand staircase. From here, I could see every perfect detail of my renovation, every choice I'd made while they thought I was nothing. Come on, I said to Wendy and Harvey. Let's order pizza. We're having a housewarming party. Just us? Harvey asked. I smiled, thinking of all the family gatherings I'd been excluded from. Just us. Sometimes the smallest families are the truest ones. Through the windows, I could see my relatives still gathered at the gate, gesturing and arguing. Let them stay there. I had everything I needed right here. The morning sun streamed through the Victorians' restored windows as I reviewed the final paperwork. Beside me, my laptop displayed the first draft of my book, Basement to Estate, A Survivor's Tale. The advance from the publisher had already funded my newest project. The contractors are ready, Wendy announced, walking into my study with coffee. They can start on the East Wing renovation whenever you give the word. I signed the last document with a flourish. Perfect timing. The women's shelter plans are approved. The doorbell rang. Through the security camera feed, I saw a local news crew on my porch. Again. They're persistent, Wendy observed. Let them wait. I took a sip of coffee. They only want the story because Viviana's been crying to anyone who'll listen about family betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Harvey. Mum's giving another interview. Says you're turning the family estate into a den of strangers. I typed back. Better strangers than snakes. The renovation plans spread across my desk showed the future. The East Wing would become transitional housing for women rebuilding their lives after divorce. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same family that had banished me to a basement would now watch their precious estate become a sanctuary for others like me. A knock at my study door revealed Quentin, the family lawyer, looking uncomfortable as always. "They've dropped the legal challenges," he said without preamble. "All of them." "Of course they did. There was nothing to challenge." He shifted his weight. "There's something else. We found irregularities in some old property transfers, forged signatures, your father's name. Let me guess, on documents Greta controlled." He nodded. "She's facing potential charges. The family is fracturing." "They fractured long ago," I said. "They just covered the cracks with money and pretense." After he left, I walked through the house to the ballroom. The chandelier caught the morning light, sending rainbows dancing across the walls. A movement caught my eye. Through the window, I saw Wesley standing at the gate, staring up at the house. I pressed the intercom. "The rent's still due." He jumped. "I'm not here about that. I read your book manuscript. Advance copy, publishing next month. You made us all look terrible." "I just told the truth. You did the rest yourselves." He ran a hand through his greying hair. "Viviana left. Said she couldn't handle the shame, the gossip, the way people look at us now." "Karma's funny that way." "Is that what this was all about? Making us feel what you felt?" I considered his question. "No, this was about building something while you were all too busy destroying things. The shame is your own creation." A car pulled up, Penny and Ivan with Harvey in the back seat. My nephew jumped out before they could stop him, running to the gate. I buzzed him in. "Mum's going crazy," he announced as he reached me. "The newspaper's running a story about Greta's fraud. Ivan's firm is losing clients. No one wants to be associated with—" He glanced at Wesley. "Well, you know." "Actions have consequences," I said, watching Penny and Ivan argue by their car. "Sometimes they take a while to arrive." Wesley cleared his throat. "The pool house. I'll be out by Friday." "Good." I turned away from the gate. "Harvey, want to help me review the shelter plans?" As we walked back inside, Harvey asked, "Do you ever feel bad about how it all turned out?" I stopped, looking back at the family tableau through the window, Wesley walking away defeated, Penny and Ivan fighting, the news crew filming it all. "They had choices," I said. "Every step of the way they chose cruelty, they chose greed, they chose to make me their scapegoat." I smiled at my nephew. I just chose to be smarter than they expected. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a group of women, the first residents of the soon-to-open shelter, here to tour their future home. "Welcome," I said, opening the door wide, "to new beginnings." As I led them through the house, explaining the renovation plans, I caught sight of my reflection in a window. No longer the broken woman from the basement, no longer the family failure, just someone who'd rebuilt herself, brick by brick, property by property. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Wendy. "Greta's being questioned by investigators right now. Karma really does come full circle." I typed back, "Some inherit a legacy, others take it back." The women around me exclaimed over the chandelier, their voices full of hope and possibility. Outside, my family's carefully constructed facade continued to crumble. But in here, something new was rising from the ashes. I touched the wall of my house. My victory, my redemption, my future. The basement had taught me patience. The betrayal had taught me strength. But this moment, this transformation of pain into purpose, this was justice. And it was sweeter than any revenge could ever be.
The bathroom floor was cold against my cheek, but I barely registered it. All I could feel was the searing ache in my ribs, a dull throb that flared into sharp pain with every shallow breath. I curled tighter, pressing my arm against the bruised flesh, trying to make myself small, invisible. "Laura, are you going to stay in there all day? What did you do to make him angry this time?" My mother's voice, Lillian, sharp and accusatory, cut through the thin door.
It wasn't a question of concern, never was. It was an indictment. I was 35 years old, a grown woman, and still my mother's voice could shrink me back to a terrified child. My name is Laura, and for years my life had been a carefully constructed prison, built by two people who claimed to love me. Before I go on, comment below where in the world you're watching this from. The first time Aaron hit me, it wasn't a punch, it was a shove. I'd spilled coffee on the carpet, a new carpet he'd just had installed. He'd exploded, a terrifying roar that had me flinching back. He grabbed my arm, spun me around, and shoved me against the wall. My head hit hard. I remember the dizzying stars, the taste of blood in my mouth from biting my tongue. He was instantly apologetic, all wide, remorseful eyes and trembling hands, swearing he'd never do it again. I believed him. I wanted to. He'd been so charming when we first met, a whirlwind of attention and grand gestures. I was 26 then, fresh out of a dead-end relationship, and Aaron, 29, swept me off my feet. He moved in within 3 months talking about our future, our family. He was so attentive, so present. He made me feel seen, something I'd rarely felt growing up with Lillian. She always had a way of making me feel like an inconvenience, a burden. Aaron was different. He made me feel like I was the center of his universe, but that universe started shrinking, slowly, insidiously. First, it was my friends. They're a bad influence, Laura. They don't understand us. Then my job. You don't need to work so hard, baby. I'll take care of everything. He took over the finances, controlled the bills, managed my schedule. He called it protecting me. I called it love. Lillian, of course, approved. He's a good provider, Laura. At least he pays the rent. You could do a lot worse. Those words became my mantra. At least he pays the rent. They echoed in my head every time a door slammed, every time his voice rose, every time his hands became too rough. He was a good provider. He kept a roof over our heads. He was good to Jacob, our son, most of the time. Jacob was 8 now, quiet and sensitive, and I tried to shield him from Aaron's moods, but it was getting harder. The shoves became more frequent. The slaps came next. Always where they wouldn't show, or where I could cover them with clothes. My arms, my back, my ribs. Never my face. He was careful about that. He liked to keep up appearances, and I, like a fool, helped him. I wore long sleeves. I perfected the art of the quick smile, the dismissive shrug when anyone asked if I was okay. Laura, I know you're in there. Aaron's voice now booming from the living room. It was laced with a dangerous edge. Where's the damn rent money? I just checked the account and it's short. $5,000 short. My breath hitched. $5,000. That was the emergency fund I'd been secretly building, a tiny nest egg, a sliver of hope for escape. I'd been siphoning off small amounts from the grocery money, selling old clothes online, anything to squirrel away a few dollars. It was barely enough for a deposit on a cheap apartment, but it was something. It was mine. Then it hit me. Lillian. She'd been over yesterday fussing, asking about our finances, clucking her tongue about how I needed to keep Aaron happy. She'd been on the phone with him earlier today, whispering. My stomach dropped. Laura, get out here now, Aaron roared. Your mother just called me, said she sent me some money to help out because you've been so difficult. $5,000. What the hell have you been telling her? My ribs screamed in protest as I pushed myself up, leaning heavily against the sink. Lillian, my own mother. She hadn't just sided with him. She'd actively sabotaged me. She'd taken my only way out and handed it to the man who was systematically destroying me. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from a cold, hard rage that was slowly, steadily beginning to burn. The cold rage that had started to burn in my gut didn't dissipate. It simmered, a low, dangerous heat that fueled something new inside me. I didn't scream back at Aaron. I didn't cry. I walked out of the bathroom, my face carefully blank, and watched him pace, red-faced, in the living room. "What did you tell her, Laura?" he demanded, his voice still too loud. "Why would she send me money? Are you trying to make me look bad?" "I didn't tell her anything, Aaron," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You know how my mother is." Always interfering, he glared, but my lack of reaction seemed to throw him off. He was used to my tears, my apologies, my desperate attempts to placate him. My silence was a new weapon. He grumbled, picked up his phone, and started making calls, probably to Lillian to clarify things. I went to the kitchen, my bruised ribs aching, and started dinner. As I chopped vegetables, my mind raced. $5,000 gone. My escape fund, snatched away by the very woman who should have protected me. That night, after Aaron had finally fallen asleep, his heavy breathing filling the room, I reached for my phone. It was an old model, nothing fancy, but it had a camera. I opened the video recorder, my thumb hovering over the record button. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a strange mix of terror and resolve. This was it. The line had been crossed. I couldn't just survive anymore. I had to fight. Over the next few weeks, I became a phantom in my own home. I moved through the days, a smile plastered on my face, a polite nod for Aaron, a gentle touch for Jacob. But every night after everyone was asleep, I was awake. I started small. Voice memos recording his angry outbursts, his threats, the subtle ways he undermined me. Then I graduated to video. My phone was always nearby, hidden in a pocket, under a pillow, propped up in a book. I learned to anticipate his moods, to turn on the camera just before the storm broke. It was terrifying, but each recording felt like a tiny chip off the wall of my prison. Each file saved was a piece of my freedom. About a month after the $5,000 incident, I was at the grocery store pushing a cart filled with the usual bland items Aaron approved of when I heard a familiar voice. "Lara, is that really you?" I turned, and there she was, Taylor Hayes, my best friend from childhood. We'd been inseparable until Aaron had slowly, meticulously pulled me away from everyone. Taylor was 36 now, just a year older than me, but she looked vibrant, confident. She was wearing a smart blazer, carrying a designer bag. She looked successful, like she had her life together. "Taylor!" A genuine smile, the first in a long time, broke through my practiced facade. We hugged, a little awkwardly at first, then tighter. "Oh my God, it's been years," she said, pulling back, her eyes scanning my face. "You look different." Her gaze lingered on my arm where a faint bruise was still visible near my elbow, barely covered by my sleeve. I quickly pulled my arm back. We talked for a long time right there in the frozen foods aisle. I told her about Jacob, about my life, carefully omitting the dark parts, but she was sharp. She picked up on the vague answers, the nervous glances, the way I deflected questions about Aaron. "Laura," she said softly, her voice filled with a concern that felt like a foreign language to me now. "Are you okay? Really?" Something in her eyes, a genuine warmth I hadn't seen in so long, broke through my defenses. I found myself whispering, "No, no, I'm not." And then a little more about Aaron's control, the isolation, the way he made me feel. I didn't mention the physical abuse, not yet. I couldn't. But just admitting that much, just saying the words out loud to someone who wasn't judging me, felt like a crack in the concrete wall around my heart. Taylor listened, her expression growing graver with every word. "Laura, this isn't right." she said, her voice firm. You don't deserve this. No one does. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. We're going to talk more, a lot more. Her concern was a tiny spark, a flicker of hope in the suffocating darkness. It reminded me of a time years ago when I had tried to leave. I was 29 then. Jacob was 2. Aaron had slapped me for the first time, an open-handed blow to my face that had left my ear ringing. I'd packed a bag, grabbed Jacob, and gone straight to Lillian's house. I thought she would help me. She was my mother. Instead, she'd taken one look at my tear-streaked face, at the terrified toddler in my arms, and sighed. Laura, what have you done? You know Aaron gets upset. You must have provoked him. She'd called Aaron, soothing him, telling him I was just emotional. And when I refused to go back, when I insisted I was leaving him, she'd called the police. Not on Aaron, on me. She told them I was having a mental health crisis, that I was unstable and endangering my child. The officers had arrived, bewildered, and after a long, humiliating conversation, I'd been forced to return home with Aaron, defeated, feeling more trapped than ever. Lillian had made sure of it. Now, with Taylor's gentle but firm presence, a different kind of resolve began to form. This time I wouldn't go to Lillian. This time I would be smarter. That evening at dinner, the air was thick with Aaron's unspoken disapproval. He'd been quiet, brooding since I got home. Jacob, sensing the tension, ate his food slowly, carefully. He was a quiet child, always observing. I reached for the juice pitcher, my hand shaken slightly. Please don't spill the juice again, Mom, Jacob whispered, his eyes wide, fixed on me. He gets mad. The words hung in the air, a fragile shield between Jacob and the storm. Please don't spill the juice again, Mom. He gets mad. Aaron didn't react immediately. He just stared at his plate, chewing slowly. But the air in the dining room grew heavy, suffocating. I felt Jacob's small hand tremble as he picked up his fork. My own hand, reaching for the juice pitcher, froze. I put it down, carefully. The rest of dinner passed in silence, punctuated only by the clink of silverware. Aaron finished first, pushed back his chair, and left the room without a word. Jacob let out a tiny, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, listening to Aaron's heavy breathing from his side of the bed. Jacob's whisper replayed in my mind. He gets mad. I'd seen Aaron angry countless times, but Jacob's fear, that quiet plea, was a fresh wound. The next morning was a Saturday. Aaron had plans to take Jacob to the park, then to his cousin Miguel's house. I watched them leave, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. Jacob, usually excited for outings, looked subdued. He gave me a quick, anxious hug before getting into the car. They were gone for hours. The house felt unnaturally quiet without Jacob's presence, without the constant low hum of Aaron's moods. I cleaned, I tried to read, but my mind kept drifting to Jacob. It was late afternoon when Aaron dropped him off. Jacob walked in, head down, clutching his worn teddy bear. Aaron gave me a curt nod, muttered something about Jacob being difficult, and left quickly, probably heading back to Miguel's or wherever he spent his free time. Hey, buddy, I said, kneeling down, trying to meet Jacob's eyes. Did you have fun? He just shook his head, his lower lip trembling. I spilled the juice, Mom. My heart squeezed. Oh, honey, it's okay. Accidents happen. He got mad, Jacob whispered, his voice barely audible. He pulled away from me, turning his back. It was just a little bit. That's when I saw it. A dark, angry red welt, a thick line stretching across his small back, just above his waistband. It looked like it had been made by a belt or something similar. My breath caught in my throat. My vision narrowed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even gasp. A strange, almost serene calm settled over me. My lips, unbidden, curved into a slow, terrifying smile. It wasn't a smile of joy or even relief. It was the smile of a predator, of someone who had just found their purpose. This was it. This was the line. He had touched my son, and now I was going to burn his world to the ground. That night, the transformation was complete. The victim was gone. In her place was a strategist, cold and clear-eyed. I pulled out my phone, not to record, but to dial. Taylor, it's Laura. I need your help. All of it. Taylor was at my door within an hour, a bottle of wine and a look of fierce determination on her face. I didn't hold back this time. I told her everything, the shoves, the slaps, the financial control, Lillian's betrayal, the $5,000. And then I pulled up Jacob's shirt, showing her the welt. Taylor's face went from concerned to horrified to absolutely furious. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at the bruise, then at me. Laura, she finally said, her voice tight with suppressed rage, why didn't you tell me sooner? I couldn't, I whispered, the words feeling alien now that the fear was gone, replaced by a chilling resolve. I was so scared, and I didn't know how. But now I know I have to, for Jacob. Damn right you do, she said, her eyes blazing. And we're not just getting you out, Lara. We're taking him down, everything he has, every last thing. She pulled out her phone. I know just the person. She's a bulldog. You're going to need more than courage to take this asshole down. You're going to need a lawyer who eats men like Aaron for breakfast. The next morning, a Sunday, Taylor brought Brooklyn Fisher to my house. Brooklyn was 34, sharp, with a no-nonsense demeanor and eyes that missed nothing. She was a lawyer, and Taylor, being a paralegal, vouched for her implicitly. We sat at my kitchen table, Jacob safely at a friend's house, and I laid out everything. The recordings, the financial control, Jacob's bruise. Brooklyn listened, taking notes, her expression unreadable. This is good, Brooklyn said, tapping her pen on her legal pad. The recordings are crucial. The child abuse is the game changer. We need more, though. We need to show a pattern, establish your financial independence, and tie up every loose end. She gave me a list. First, you need a secret bank account, online, no paper trail to this address. Start funneling any money you can get into it, small amounts. Next, we need to know everything about his finances, his habits, where he goes, who he talks to, anything that could give us leverage. That afternoon, while Aaron was out, I put Brooklyn's words into action. I opened an online-only savings account, using a P.O. box address I'd rented discreetly. It felt like a tiny act of rebellion, a whisper of freedom. Then, heart-pounding, I found the small, discreet listening device Brooklyn had given Taylor, no bigger than a thumb drive. I waited until Aaron's car was parked in the driveway, his keys on the hook by the door. My hands were steady as I slipped out, opened the passenger door, and following Brooklyn's instructions, tucked the tiny bug deep under the dashboard, securing it with a piece of tape. It was almost invisible. I closed the car door, walked back inside, and locked the door behind me. My breath hitched, but it wasn't from fear. It was from a surge of adrenaline, a chilling thrill. The game had begun. The tiny bug in Aaron's car was a revelation. It broadcast his life, unfiltered, directly into my phone. I'd bought a burner phone, cheap and untraceable, just for this. Every night after Aaron was asleep and Jacob was tucked into bed, I'd plug in my headphones and listen. It was sickening, but also empowering. I heard him talking to other women, not just one, but several. His smooth, charming voice, the same one he'd used to reel me in, now spun lies and promises to strangers. I heard him brag about his conquests, about how easy it was to manipulate women. I recorded every call, every hushed conversation, every casual mention of names and places. This wasn't just about extramarital affairs, it was about his character, his complete disregard for anyone but himself. One night, I heard him talking to someone about a score and getting rid of the evidence. He mentioned a stash in the garage, just in case. My blood ran cold. Weapons, drugs. I'd always suspected, seen the occasional suspicious package, the way his eyes would get too bright, too manic. But now I had confirmation. A few days later, Aaron was out late, supposedly at Miguel's. I waited until I was sure he wouldn't be back for hours. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I went to the garage, a place Aaron usually kept locked, but he'd been careless, leaving a spare key under a loose brick. Inside, tucked away in a dusty toolbox behind some old paint cans, I found it. A small, unregistered handgun, and beneath it a Ziploc bag containing a white, powdery substance and a few small, clear baggies. Cocaine. My stomach churned, but I didn't hesitate. I snapped photos with my burner phone, time-stamped and clear. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. The evidence was piling up. While I was meticulously gathering his dirty secrets, I was also building my own foundation. Taylor had connected me with Connor Rose, a former colleague of hers who worked in remote tech support. Connor was a quiet guy but incredibly helpful. He understood my need for discretion and helped me set up a legitimate remote job, working late nights after Jacob was asleep. It was entry level, but it was mine. It meant I was earning money that Aaron couldn't touch, couldn't even know about. Connor helped me create a paper trail of my self-sufficiency, routing my paychecks to my new secret bank account, ensuring no mail came to the house. It was exhausting, often sleeping only a few hours a night, but every dollar earned felt like a brick in my escape tunnel. My mental health was a priority, too. Brooklyn had stressed the importance of appearing stable and proactive. She also gave me the name of Saijay Price, a social worker who specialized in family support and child advocacy. Saijay wasn't officially involved with Jacob's case yet, but she offered discreet online sessions for parents navigating difficult domestic situations. I started meeting with Saijay twice a week via video call, usually from my car parked miles away or late at night in the bathroom with the fan on. Saijay was calm, empathetic, and incredibly insightful. She helped me articulate the gaslighting, the emotional abuse, the constant fear. She also helped me strategize how to present myself as a stable, protective parent. Document everything, Laura, she advised. Your efforts to create a safe environment for Jacob, your financial planning, your engagement with his school. Every positive step you take strengthens your case. I started a detailed journal, logging Jacob's activities, my interactions with his teachers, even simple things like reading to him every night. I made sure to take him to all his doctor's appointments, keeping meticulous records. I was building a narrative not just for the courts, but for myself. I was a good mother. I was fighting for my son. The weight of it all was immense, but the rage fueled me. I was no longer just surviving, I was preparing for war. Iran, meanwhile, was oblivious. He still saw me as the same timid, compliant wife. He was getting bolder, more careless, convinced he had me trapped. One evening I was in the kitchen pretending to clean up after dinner while Aaron was on the phone in the living room. Jacob was already in bed. The car bug was off, but Aaron's voice carried clearly. No, she won't try anything, he was saying, his voice low but arrogant. She knows better. Besides, I've got her cornered. If she ever tries to leave again, I'll make sure no judge gives her that kid. She'll lose everything, including Jacob. The words hit me like a physical blow, colder than any bruise. He wasn't just trying to control me, he was threatening Jacob. He was going to use my son as a weapon. My hands clenched around the dish towel. The last vestiges of fear evaporated, replaced by an absolute, unshakable certainty. He had no idea what was coming. The Saturday dawned, not with a gentle sunrise, but with a cold, clear light that felt surgical. I was up before the alarm, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, my heart a steady drumbeat in my chest. This was it, the day everything changed, the day I stopped being a victim. At 6 a.m. sharp, Taylor's car pulled into the driveway. She gave a quick, almost imperceptible nod from behind the wheel. Jacob, still sleepy, was already dressed in the clothes I'd laid out for him. "Hey, buddy," I said, kneeling down, trying to keep my voice light. "Auntie Taylor's here to take you on a special adventure today. You're going to get to spend the whole day with her, maybe even stay over tonight." Jacob's eyes widened slightly. He loved Taylor. "Really? All day?" "All day," I confirmed, pulling him into a tight hug. I whispered into his hair, "Be brave, my sweet boy. Everything's going to be okay." He hugged me back, then trotted out to Taylor's car. I watched them drive away, Jacob waving from the back seat, until the car disappeared around the corner. The house felt eerily quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with purpose. The moment Taylor's car was out of sight, my phone vibrated. A text from Brooklyn. "Motions filed. Judges signed off. Go time." My first move was the joint bank account. Aaron had always controlled it, but I had access to the online portal. Over the past few weeks, I'd been quietly transferring small amounts into my secret account. Now, with a few clicks, I initiated a wire transfer for the bulk of the remaining funds. Not everything, just enough to leave him high and dry, but not so much that it would immediately flag as suspicious until it was too late. It would take a few hours to clear, but the wheels were in motion. Next, the utilities. Aaron had set up most of them, but I had gathered the account numbers and passwords from his messy desk over the past month. I called the electric company, the water company, the internet provider. "I need to cancel service," I stated, my voice firm. "We're moving." Yes, effective immediately." They tried to transfer me to offer incentives, but I was relentless. "No, thank you. Just cancel." Within an hour, his power, water, and internet were scheduled to be cut off by noon. He wouldn't even know until he tried to turn on a light or check his phone. The lease was trickier, but Brooklyn had a plan. Months ago, when we'd renewed the lease on the house, Aaron had forged my signature on the updated agreement. He thought he was being clever, ensuring I couldn't leave without his consent. What he didn't know was that I had found the original document, the one with my real signature and a copy of the forged one. Brooklyn had used this to file a complaint of fraud with the landlord, and more importantly, with the housing authority. She'd already notified them that I was terminating the lease due to fraudulent activity and that I would be vacating the premises immediately, effective that morning. The landlord, facing potential legal trouble for a forged document, was surprisingly cooperative. They just wanted to avoid a lawsuit. The electronic trail was undeniable. I moved through the house with a chilling efficiency, gathering only what Jacob and I absolutely needed: a few changes of clothes, important documents I'd already copied and stored, Jacob's favorite books and toys. I left everything else: the furniture, the appliances, the memories of a life that was never truly mine. It would all be part of the wreckage. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Brooklyn. "They're at his office now. Social worker C.J. Price and 2 officers. They have the restraining order and the child abuse report. It's happening. I pictured it. Aaron in his polished office, his smug smile, his air of untouchable authority. And then the knock on the door, the uniforms, Sagey's calm, professional demeanor, the look on his face as the papers were served, the public humiliation he so carefully avoided. A grim satisfaction spread through me. The silence in the house was deafening, yet it felt like the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The air was lighter, cleaner. I walked through the empty rooms, the ones I'd felt trapped in for so long, and felt nothing but a profound sense of release. Just as I was about to walk out the door for good, my phone rang. It was Aaron. His picture flashed on the screen, a photo from years ago before the charming facade had cracked. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the answer button. He called again and again. The phone vibrated relentlessly in my hand. I didn't answer. I let it ring, listening to the frantic, desperate sound of it. He was probably already reeling, his world imploding around him. This was the first time in years I'd let his call go to voicemail. I imagined his face, red with fury, then confusion, then desperation. The thought brought a chilling smile to my lips. He was finally losing control, and I was finally free. I sat on Taylor's couch, a mug of lukewarm tea in my hands, the silence of her apartment a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just unleashed. Jacob was with Taylor's sister, happily distracted by cartoons and a new toy. My phone, the burner, was buzzing relentlessly in my pocket. Aaron still calling, still leaving voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. Taylor walked in, her face grim but determined. Brooklyn just called. Updates. I set the tea down. Lay it on me. His car was repossessed, she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. He tried to pay for gas with a card that was declined. The bank had already frozen the joint account after your transfer went through. The finance company had a tracker on the car, and they were already looking for it because he was behind on payments. They swooped in. A small, grim smile touched my lips. Good. And the police, Taylor continued. They followed up on the lead about that woman, Sarah, the one you mentioned he assaulted years ago. Sarah was a name I'd heard Aaron brag about once, a casual mention of a crazy ex who deserved what she got. I'd given Brooklyn the name, a shot in the dark, hoping she could find something. Turns out, Sarah had filed a report back then, but it was dismissed. With your new evidence and Sagey's report, they've reopened the case. Charges are piling up, Laura. Domestic violence, child endangerment, assault. My breath hitched. Sarah, another ghost I could finally lay to rest. What about the weapons? That's where it gets interesting, Taylor said, a slight smirk. Aaron's cousin, Miguel Bailey. The police went to question him. Apparently, Aaron called Miguel in a panic, trying to get him to clean up some things at the house. Miguel, bless his idiot heart, tried to deny knowing anything about the weapons you photographed. But then, when pressed, he accidentally confirmed there were other weapons, not just the one you reported, hidden in a storage unit Aaron rented under a fake name. He was trying to protect Aaron, but he just dug him a deeper hole. They've got a warrant for the storage unit now. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from a chilling sense of triumph. Every loose thread, every dark secret was unraveling. The burner phone in my pocket vibrated again. This time it wasn't Aaron. It was Lillian. I let it ring and ring and ring. She called 5 times in a row before stopping. I knew she'd be frantic. Her golden boy, her perfect Aaron, was crumbling. About an hour later, there was a pounding on Taylor's apartment door. Not a polite knock, but a desperate, furious hammering. Taylor looked at me, her eyebrows raised. I nodded. It's her. Taylor opened the door, and Lillian stood there, disheveled, her face blotchy and red. Her eyes, usually so cold, were wide with panic. She pushed past Taylor, her gaze locking onto me. "Laura, what have you done?" she shrieked, her voice shrill. "Aaron just called me. He said the police were at his office. They took his car. He can't get into the bank. What is going on? You have to fix this." I stood up slowly, my gaze unwavering. "Fix what, Mother?" "This mess. This absolute disaster. He's the father of your child. How could you do this to him? To us? He's a good man. He provides for you. You're ruining his life." She gestured wildly, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "You always do this, Laura. You always cause trouble. You must have provoked him. You always provoke men." A cold, hard laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a pretty sound. "Provoke him? You want to know what I provoked, Lillian? I provoked him into showing his true colors. I provoked him into hitting my son, into threatening to take Jacob away from me. I provoked him into finally facing the consequences of his actions." Her face twisted. "You're lying. Aaron would never—" "He did," I cut her off, my voice dangerously low, each word a carefully aimed dart. "He did, and you know what else he did. He took the $5,000 you gave him. The money you gave him to make things right. The money you gave him while I was bleeding, while he was systematically destroying me. You enabled him. You funded him. You chose him over your own daughter, over your own grandson." Lillian recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "I was helping. I was trying to keep your family together." "No," I said, stepping closer, my voice a whisper that carried more weight than any shout. "You were trying to keep him happy. You were trying to maintain your illusion of a perfect family, no matter the cost to me. You told me to stay silent. You told me to suffer. You told me my worth was tied to keeping a man, any man, happy. You gave him money while I bled. Tell him to be grateful." Her face crumpled. The bravado drained out of her, replaced by a raw, pathetic desperation. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She swayed, her eyes wide and unfocused. "You reap what you sow, Mother," I said, my voice devoid of warmth, "and you sowed a field of poison." Lillian's eyes rolled back. She let out a choked gasp, a strange gurgling sound, and then with a soft thud she collapsed onto the hallway floor, a heap of expensive clothes and shattered illusions. I looked down at her, my mother, lying unconscious at my feet. For a moment, a flicker of something, perhaps pity, perhaps a ghost of the little girl who just wanted her mother's love, stirred within me, but it was quickly extinguished. She had made her choices, and so had I. I looked at Taylor, who stood frozen, her hand still on the doorknob. "Call 911, I said, my voice steady. "Tell them there's a woman who collapsed outside our door, and then close it." Taylor, her face pale but resolute, made the call. She relayed the address, described Lillian's symptoms, and then, as instructed, closed the door. The sound of the ambulance siren grew louder, then faded. I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to. Lillian was no longer my problem. The next few days were a blur of legal proceedings and media frenzy. Aaron's arrest was swift. The police, armed with my recordings, the photos of the hidden gun and drugs, Miguel's unwitting confession about the storage unit, and Sarah's reopened case, had more than enough to act. He was charged with prior domestic violence, child abuse, and child endangerment. The discovery of the additional weapons in the storage unit added illegal possession charges to the growing list. He was denied bail. Lillian's involvement didn't go unnoticed. The $5,000 she'd wired to Aaron, coupled with her past history of interfering with my attempts to leave, raised red flags. As part of the investigation into Aaron's finances, those fraudulent deposits from Lillian were scrutinized. It turned out she had been funneling money to Aaron for years, not just the $5,000, but other sums, often untraceable cash payments to help him maintain his lifestyle and control over me. The authorities discovered some of this money was linked to questionable sources on Lillian's side, old business dealings that were now under review. Her financial support was seized as part of the investigation, her assets frozen. The social ruin she'd always feared was now a very public reality. Her carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbled. Amidst the legal chaos, a quiet, unexpected warmth began to bloom. Taylor and Brooklyn, who had been all business and legal strategy, started to show a different side. I noticed the glances between them, the way Brooklyn's voice softened when she talked to Taylor, the easy laughter they shared. One evening, after a particularly grueling meeting with Saja Price about Jacob's custody arrangements, Taylor and I were unwinding at her apartment. Brooklyn joined us later, bringing takeout. "You know," Taylor said, a little hesitantly, "Brooklyn and we've been seeing each other." She blushed, a rare sight on her usually composed face. My eyebrows rose in surprise, then a genuine smile spread across my face. "Really? That's wonderful." Brooklyn, usually so stoic, actually looked a little shy. "It just happened? We spent so much time together working on your case and—" She trailed off, looking at Taylor, who smiled back, a soft, tender look I hadn't seen on either of them before. It was a small thing, a subplot of romance unfolding amidst the wreckage of my life, but it felt like a balm. Healing wasn't just about Aaron's downfall, it was about finding connection, finding community. Taylor and Brooklyn, forged in the fire of my revenge, were becoming a new kind of family. A few weeks later, after Aaron's preliminary hearing, Lillian showed up at Taylor's apartment again. She looked gaunt, her clothes rumpled, a shadow of her former self. Her voice was thin, pleading. "Laura, please," she begged, her eyes red-rimmed. "I have nowhere to go. My accounts are frozen. They're investigating everything. I need to move back in with you, just until this blows over." I looked at her, then at Jacob, who was playing quietly in the corner, oblivious. My son, the reason I had fought, the reason I had finally broken free. "No," I said, my voice calm, unwavering. "You can't. This isn't your home anymore. It hasn't been for a very long time." "But I'm your mother," she cried, desperation making her voice crack. "And Jacob needs his grandmother. I can help with him." "You taught me to stay silent, Mother," I said, my voice slow and deliberate, echoing the words I'd used to Aaron. "You taught me to accept abuse, to prioritize a man's comfort over my own safety. You taught me to be a victim, but I'm teaching my son the opposite. I'm teaching him that his voice matters. I'm teaching him that he deserves to be safe, and you, Lillian, are not part of that lesson." Her face went slack. The last shred of hope drained from her eyes. She tried one more time, a desperate, pathetic attempt to regain control. A few days later, I got a call from Jacob's school. "Ms. Garrett," the principal's voice was strained, "your mother, Lillian Garrett, just tried to pick up Jacob. She claimed she was collecting her grandson and that you had given her permission. We, of course, did not release him. She became quite agitated. We've had to escort her off the property, and we filed a report." My blood ran cold. She was still trying to manipulate, still trying to use Jacob. "Thank you," I said, my voice tight. "Thank you for protecting him." The call solidified it. There would be no reconciliation, no second chances. Lillian had made her bed, and now she would lie in it, alone. My mother, the ghost of my past, was finally gone. The quiet hum of the washing machine was the loudest sound in the apartment. It was a mundane noise, but to me it was the sound of peace. 6 months had passed since that chaotic Saturday morning, 6 months since I walked out of that house, leaving Aaron's world to implode behind me. Life had settled into a rhythm I hadn't known was possible. Jacob, my brave, resilient Jacob, was thriving. He still had his moments quiet and watchful, but the fear that had once clouded his eyes was slowly fading. His therapist, a kind woman C.J. Price had recommended, confirmed it during our last session. His night terrors have all but stopped, Lara, she told me, her voice soft. He's starting to open up to trust again. He's a remarkable child. Hearing that, seeing Jacob laugh freely, truly laugh, was a reward beyond anything I could have imagined. He was 8, still small for his age, but growing stronger every day. We were living in a small, bright apartment now, just Jacob and me. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, paid for by my remote job that Connor had helped me secure, and the small portion of the joint account I'd managed to salvage. Taylor and Brooklyn had been instrumental in helping me find it, navigate the paperwork, and even move in. They were more than friends. They were family now. Most evenings we'd have dinner together. Taylor, Brooklyn, Jacob, and me. Tonight was no different. Taylor was telling a hilarious story about a particularly difficult client, and Brooklyn, usually so composed, kept dissolving into giggles, leaning into Taylor's side. Their relationship had deepened, a quiet, steady flame that brought warmth to our little circle. It was easy, comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding. We had all been through the fire, and we had emerged together. "Mom, can I have more pasta?" Jacob asked, his mouth full, his eyes bright. "Of course, sweetie," I said, reaching for the bowl. The simple act, the simple request, filled me with a profound sense of gratitude. No tension, no fear, just a happy child asking for more food. Aaron was a ghost now, a name whispered in legal documents. He was institutionalized, deemed a flight risk, and a danger to himself and others, awaiting trial. The charges against him were extensive: domestic violence, child abuse, illegal possession of weapons, fraud. Brooklyn was confident. "He'll be doing serious time, Laura," she'd assured me. "The evidence is overwhelming. He won't see the light of day for a very long time." Jail loomed a dark, inescapable shadow over his future. Lillian, my mother, had vanished from my life entirely. Her financial ruin was complete. The investigation into her questionable dealings had revealed a web of deceit that led to her assets being frozen and her reputation destroyed. She was living with a distant cousin, stripped of her carefully curated image, her influence, her power. After her attempt to take Jacob from school, I filed a formal no-contact order. The silence from her was absolute. It wasn't a victory I celebrated, but it was a necessary peace. A few days later, I sat in C.J. Price's office, the same social worker who had helped me so much. She was also a licensed therapist, and I continued our sessions. "How are you feeling, Laura?" she asked, her voice gentle. I paused, looking out the window at the vibrant green leaves on the trees, a color I felt I was truly seeing for the first time. "I'm different," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. For so long, my world felt like it was in black and white. Or maybe just shades of gray. All the noise, the fear, the constant walking on eggshells, it muted everything. I took a deep breath, the air feeling clean and crisp in my lungs. "Now," I continued, "I dream in color, Sage, vivid, bright colors. And when I wake up, the world outside my window is just as vibrant. The quiet is no longer terrifying. It's a relief." She nodded, a warm, understanding smile on her face. "You've done an incredible job, Lara. You reclaimed your life." "And Jacob's." I did, I agreed, a fierce pride swelling in my chest. The world finally turned quiet and I didn't miss the noise. He looked at me like he owned me. Now he can do it through bulletproof glass.